Being 7 o'clock, I call to order this April 9th, 2018 meeting of the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen. Please join in a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Notification.
Thank you. First one announcement, Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and taping for viewing at a later time. Are there any other members of the press, either recording audio or video? The Independent? We'll start with public service announcements. Is anyone here from the Minuteman March?
I think there is.
You sure?
You should have gun isn't loaded.
Let me check my ID. Good evening, everyone. I am Jim Curley from Galloway Road, also known as Sergeant Jim Curley with the Chelmsford Minutemen, a division of the 6th Middlesex Regiment. And I'm here today to remind everybody that 243 years ago, our forefathers created treason. We rebelled against the king, and on April 19, 1775, we had the first ordered firing on the king's soldiers. And the Chelmsford Minutemen were a part of that battle. So, to honor them, we reenact that precious march from Chelmsford to Concord, and then we engage in a little bit of a battle there also, and then we do a little 2-mile parade through Concord. What we really do is we reenact the day's events. As you can see, we wear our accoutrements just like we were way back then, 243 years ago. We don't wear uniforms, we wear outfits because we wear whatever we would have been wearing in our daily activity. Because as we know, Minutemen were supposed to be ready at a moment's notice to go and fight the battle, so we would wear whatever we typically wore. So when everyone comes and joins us on this march, you'll see us in a bunch of different outfits. So the march is a 10-mile march from the from the Common to Concord. We start, are you ready for this? At 4 a.m. because that's when it actually happened. Whether it was a rider or whether it was a musket shot from the neighboring towns, our Minutemen mustered, and 110 Minutemen went to the North Bridge that night, or that morning, April 19th, 1775. What we do is we walk the trail that we believe was done from the center of town near where we now have the sundial. And my joke is, of course, we have to raise a lantern to see what time it is at 4 a.m. in the morning. And we walk that trail, and we bring Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, citizens, everybody with us who wants to come. Last year we had 35 people with us. This year we hope to have even more. We visited Troop 75 last week, and we got, I think, 12 to 18 scouts that said they're going to come. So that's pretty impressive. Scouts that do make the march get one of these coveted patches that they get to put on their uniform. And they can only ever get them from me once they've completed the 10-mile march. And if they've already done it before and or that day, they'll get a date badge that goes around it. We started this in 2012, and we actually have some scouts who this will be their 7th time with us, and they'll actually get their 7th date badge. So we encourage anyone who wants to come with us, of course. We step off again at 4 a.m. at the Common. Thanks to the Chief and Lieutenant Spence, we will have a blue light a blue light honor guard through the center of town, make sure that we don't get run over by anyone at 4 a.m. Same thing once we get into Carlisle. When we get into Carlisle, we stop and we have a little bit of breakfast at Fern's. Everyone knows Fern's, I assume. And then we do a firing and a flag raising with the Carlisle Minutemen, and then we do a little dedication to their men that they lost that day. Then we go off and we continue the march, and we take the Estabrook Trail in Carlisle, that is the documented trail that Colonel Estabrook took that day on his way to the bridge. Once we get to the bridge, we hand out the badges and patches and such to the scouts, and then some of us will actually be engaged in a battle recreation at the bridge. After that, well, we get to actually fire the muskets. After that, then we will gather up again, and we have a parade through the town of Concord. So, once again, we start at 4 a.m. at the Common. We end in Concord, and we look forward to anyone and everyone who wants to join us. Now, I'm assuming that our newest selectman understands when you got sworn in that you're supposed to go with us? Was
So
that
I've
explained?
heard.
No, so you've heard, okay. At least the expectation was set. Thank you so much. So the last thing I ask is, how many of you are going to be with us either in body or in spirit? Spirit, okay. Thank you all. Any questions?
So Sergeant Curley, what was the weather that morning?
The weather that morning, according to the documented books, and we actually have a nice book, The History of Chelmsford by Dr. Waters, published in 1912 in the library, that describes it. It was cold, it was wet, it was rainy, it was dark, and it was gloomy. Perfect. Just like it might be next Monday. And the only time we ever call it off is if the Minuteman National Park Rangers call it off, which they haven't done in over 25 years. So we intend to go.
Last year, Selectman Lefebvre indicated that he was going along with you. Does he look familiar at all?
He does look very familiar. I've seen the picture around. He may have been dressed in a slightly different outfit that day, so I really don't remember. Do you have your bad patch with you?
I have a standing IOU with
You
you.
have a standing IU, okay.
I'll see you next week.
I go away every Patriots Day. I'm out of town again.
Give you a call.
Call me if you want.
By the way, Pat has joined us, and she has one of these patches.
I do.
Congratulations, Pat.
So there. Any last questions? Hearing none, I shall retire. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Look,
you.
thank you.
Next, we have someone here to talk about the Chelmsford Townwide cleanup.
I'm not sure there's anybody here. I can step in. It's part of the whole Earth Day and activities in the month of April. There will be a townwide cleanup on Saturday, April 21st, throughout the day in order to beautify the town. And basically, the key message we want to get out tonight is if you're interested in participating in this event, contact the DPW at telephone at 250-5203 or email Nick Parley at nparley@townofchelmsford.us. And he can supply you with the bags and the gloves and all other materials, And so, this is, I think, probably about the 6th or 7th year they've done this activity. And so, once again, they're hoping that people will come out on the 21st. And all you do is you pick up and then you leave the bags by the roadway, and then the town and will take care of the rest. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there someone here from the Historical Society to talk about the annual dinner?
Why, there is. I didn't bring a costume, though. I'm Becky Warren. I'm on the Board of Directors of the Chelmsford Historical Society, and I'm here to welcome everyone to attend our annual dinner and Guardian Award presentation for the Chelmsford Historical Society. So mark your calendars, Saturday, May 5th. There's no 10-mile march involved in this particular, we're eating. That's a good thing. So Saturday, May 5th, starting at 4:30 in the afternoon, we will have a dinner in the Ralph Parley Agricultural Center. Yes, in the basement of a barn, but it's in a better condition than it ever would have been then. And we will have a fine dinner, and then we will have our Guardian Award presentation. And this year's recipient is the gentleman that just took your picture for the town. Mr. Fred Merriam is going to be awarded the Guardian Award. And the Guardian Award represents our town motto. So preserving Chelmsford's history, if there is a person in the last 10 years that is indicative of preserving Chelmsford's history, I would have to say it's Mr. Fred Merriam for what he has put on the town website. He's made history accessible. People can look up the history of their homes. They can look up about the town history. They can be in California and learn about Chelmsford. So the gentleman has done an amazing feat in getting the history of the town out there. So we're going to honor him on Saturday, May 5th, 4:30 at the Chelmsford Historical Society, 40 Byam Road. And we invite all folks to attend, fans of Chelmsford history. We hope you can join us. If you Google Chelmsford Historical Society, you can find our website, which has the information on how to get tickets. The tickets are $22 to pay for the food, or folks are welcome to give Mr. Tom Cristiano a call at 256-2181 to get more information. So thank you, and I hope I can see folks there. Enjoy the day.
Thanks,
you.
Becky.
We have some proclamations tonight. First is the Town of Chelmsford Scholarship Fund. Ken, can you read that?
Yes. So we have a proclamation in recognition of the Town of Chelmsford Scholarship Fund, April 2018. Whereas the Town of Chelmsford Scholarship Fund was founded on April 8th, 1957, and will celebrate its 61st anniversary in April, and has been awarding scholarships continually since 1957, totaling over $1,500,000. The fund obtains its income from voluntary contributions from individuals, organizations, and businesses, and does not obtain any funding from tax revenues. And whereas the fund exists to provide financial assistance in the form of scholarships to Chelmsford residents who have completed secondary school and wish to continue their undergraduate education, the fund awards scholarships based on need, scholastic achievement, college acceptance, and qualities of character. And whereas citizens may assist the annual fund appeal by mailing contributions to Treasurer, P.O. Box 296, Chelmsford, Mass. 01824, with checks made payable to the Town of Chelmsford Scholarship Fund, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Memorial contributions in honor of special occasions or individuals may also be made. And whereas the fund has awarded over $1,581,020 to students, including awards given out last year in 2017, totaling over $62,750, this year will mark the fund's 61st anniversary. Therefore, this honorable body proclaims the month of April 2018 as Chelmsford's Scholarship Month and calls upon its citizens to support and encourage the officers and directors of this organization in their annual fund drive. Signed this 9th day of April 2019 by 2018 by the town clerk, Patricia Durzis, Glenn Diggs, the Board of Selectmen, Glenn Diggs, Ken LaFave, Emily Intill, George Diction, and Pat Wojcik.
That's Marion Currier.
And Marion, you're going to accept that?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The next proclamation is for the Garden Club for Arbor Day. Did you want to read that, Ken?
Sure. Town of Chelmsford proclamation in celebration of Arbor Day, April
Good
27,
evening.
2018.
I'm Kate Crawford from Chelmsford Garden Club, and I've come to ask for the proclamation for Arbor Day to be on Friday, the 27th of April, as is nationally. We plan to celebrate that by having a celebration on that day at 3:30 at the Chelmsford Public Gardens and planting again another Cleveland pear tree, kind of echoing the opposite corner of the garden. So it will be, if you're facing the sign, in the back right-hand area. We'll have probably refreshments and a Boy Scout troop and probably about 30 people there. So if you can join us, I brought some invitations to you, and I'll pass them out. So,
Do we read the proclamation? Sure. So the Town of Chelmsford proclamation in celebration of Arbor Day, April 27, 2018. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and where Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and beautify our community. And whereas trees in our town increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of the business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen, do hereby proclaim April 27, 2018 as Arbor Day in the town of Chelmsford, and urge all citizens to protect your trees and woodlands, and to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations, and to take part in programs to celebrate Arbor Day, particularly the tree planting ceremony at Garrison, is that?
We'll be at the.
I'm sorry, it'll be at the
Chelmsford Public
Public Gardens, yes. Signed this 9th day of April 2018, signed by the town clerk, Pat Jurgis, Board of Selectmen, Glenn Diggs, Ken LaFave, Emily Intel, George Dixon, and Pat Wojcik.
You come up together.
Thank you.
You warned me of that, the last sentence.
Thank you.
No? When you get rolling, you forget.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we have another proclamation for Earth Day. Is anyone here from Earth Day? Ken, do you want to read the
Sure.
proclamation?
Town of Chelmsford proclamation in celebration of Earth Day, April 22nd, 2018. Whereas the global community now faces extraordinary challenges such as global health issues, food and water shortages, and economic struggles, and whereas all people, regardless of race, gender, income, or geography, have a moral right to a healthy, sustainable environment with economic growth, and whereas it is understood that the citizens of the global community must step forward to take action to create a green economy to combat the aforementioned global challenges, and whereas a green economy can be achieved on the individual level through educational efforts, public policy, and consumer activism campaigns, and whereas it is necessary to broaden and diversify this global movement to achieve maximum success, and whereas Earth Day is the beginning of a new year for environmental stewardship, commitments to implement sustainable efforts and commit to an Earth Day resolution, and therefore, let it be known that the town of Chelmsford hereby encourages its residents, businesses, and institutions to use Earth Day to celebrate the earth and commit to building a sustainable and green economy. Now, therefore, let it be resolved on the 9th day of April 2018 that the town of Chelmsford hereby pledges that this Earth Day, April 22nd, 2018, is to support green initiatives in Chelmsford and to encourage others to undertake similar actions. Signed this 9th day of April 2018 by the town clerk, Patricia Durgis, by the Board of Selectmen, Glenn Diggs, Ken LaFave, Emily Entel, George Dixon, and Pat Wojcik.
Thank you. Next, we have open session. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board about any topic this evening? Please state your name and residence.
Marty Spalding, 19 Moore Street. The main reason I'm here today is because our tax bills came out. I noticed mine was a little bit high, like about 14% higher. And I just wondered if we could speak on that for a minute. I don't know how many other people in town are concerned with the increase in taxes, but I've spoken to a few. I noticed that the DOR has a group for local services now that is a group of lawyers that work with the towns to work on tax setting, tax assessment. And I didn't know whether we used them. I've spoken to Frank a little bit about this, but I just think that's a pretty high assessment. With Prop 2.5, I guess we've just dismantled it. I'm also concerned that we haven't got a warrant article for open burning. And I'd like to see a ban on blowers. If we're going to be a green community, we should think of people's health and their breathing. And I've seen people have fires, open burning, blowing leaves and seeds and things all over people's property. That stuff gets in the air, the mold gets in the air. Just a thought. I mulch my leaves. They go into a bagger. They go into a mulch pile. Just a thought, if we're going to be a green community. Just a comment on 101 Mill Road. Are we going to spend more money? Are we going to have a private inn? Is the town going to run the inn? That's just one of the warrant articles I was interested in. I wondered if we get a Comcast statement like we get a Verizon statement on income expenditures that's considered as part of the budget. I guess I'm talking a lot and not giving anybody time to respond. I wondered if we'd consider using Facebook, or if we want to continue using Facebook, given the current situation and harvesting people's information. And comment on the website. I liked our old website. The new one takes a lot of scrolling, and there are a lot of unnecessary big boxes there that appear on every page. I'd like to see town meeting move to Saturdays. Having town meeting in the evenings when everybody's tired coming home from work might be a nice thought. I know that's come up before. I guess the other thing is I was trying to find the warrant articles and searched and couldn't find them. I know I got to them at one point, but those are just some comments and things I had to say today. So,
Thank you.
thank
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
time.
Is there any other comments tonight? Nope. All right. Next up is public hearing for licenses.
Committee vacancies.
Open vacancies.
Number 4. Committee vacancies.
Oh, excuse me, committee vacancies. Ken, do you want to read the list?
Sure. So committee vacancies. We have one associate member for the Board of Appeals. We're looking for one Center Village Master Plan Implementation person on the committee. We're looking for 4 people for the Civic Committee, 1 person for the Commission on Disabilities, 2 for our Community Action Program Committee, up to 21 for the Cultural Council, 2 for the Energy Conservation Committee, 1 for Historic District Commission. We have 3 vacancies for the Holiday Decorating Committee. The Parade Committee welcomes all applicants, more the merrier. We're looking for 5 people for the Public Celebrations Committee, 1 for Recycling Committee, 2 for the Sign Advisory Committee, 2 for the Skate Park Committee, 1 for the Tree Committee, and 1 for the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee. If you're interested in serving on a town board or committee, you can apply at the town website or contact the town manager's office.
Now we have licenses. 1-day beer and wine license for Huntington's Disease Society of America. Is anyone here from that group?
He
Is this one?
was. I thought he must have just stepped outside. I thought Dave Souza was here.
I didn't see Dave.
He didn't?
Did he
I
go
thought he
out?
was sitting in the back, but, okay, maybe he left.
This is at the Chelmsford Senior Center, 75 Groton Road. I think we've had this one before. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine license for the Huntington Disease Society of America Trivial Night to be held at the Chelmsford Senior Center, 75 Groton Road, on May 12, 2018.
Do we have a second?
I will second it.
We have a motion, a second, any discussion?
We have everything, tips and everything is in here, right?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Yep.
We have a common victular license, entertainment license for the Chelmsford Pizza, 170 Concord Road. Is there anyone here from that group tonight?
But the only thing we usually show in this is the,
Good evening. What do you want me to say? My name is George Janetos, and I live in 26 South Main Street in Derry. So I'm looking for the I just take over the pizza place. Used to be Omega Pizza, and I try to get my license.
You're now open?
Could be open, everything goes good by May 1st.
Very good. And do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application for a common particular license for Chelmsford Pizza to be exercised on the premises of 170 Concord Road.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion, a second, any discussion?
I have a question on one of your applications, you have capacity of 44. Another place it says 60. It looks like, if you count the seats, it's 60, but just want to verify what the seating capacity is.
I didn't change anything. It used to be the same thing. So whatever was the old pizza place, it stays the same thing. I didn't change anything. So
I think it's 60.
Okay,
It is 60.
yeah, it does show 60 in the diagram, so, yeah, just want to be sure.
It's going to be 60?
Apparently,
probably, I don't mind.
it
Whatever.
says existing use
But
60.
it was the same thing. I never changed anything. It used to be the same chairs, the same tables, the same thing. I did change anything, so
Okay.
just like the words before.
Well, do we have a motion?
Oh, I made it.
Oh, excuse me.
Right to vote.
The only entertainment is the cable
Do we have,
TV.
we have a motion, a second, any discussion? You made it, is that, any other discussion?
Is the,
George has a
Part of the
question.
entertainment license is the cable TV.
that's it, right? Okay, that's fine. I'm all set.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good luck.
Next, we have Selectmen recommendations of town meeting warrant articles. Unless someone has objection, if there's someone here for one or more of the articles, maybe you could indicate which ones. We'll take those first so that you don't have to wait all night.
Or do you just want to run through order? Order?
All right, we'll just go
Okay,
through the
we'll-
list one by one.
Sure, we'll try to go through it real quick. The first article is reports of town offices and committees. Can you put up my PowerPoint? Just to know the board, the two groups that I know are making reports at this town meeting would be the Roberts Field Playground Committee will be providing an update since their funding request was at the last town meeting. And also the Economic Development Commission will be providing an update on the Route 129 branding and marketing. So if the board, if any of you think over the next few weeks, anyone else that you think town meeting should hear from, please let me know and we'll schedule them in. Go to the next slide. So that's what they are. Again, there's no votes but needed, obviously, under Article 1. It's just to hear reports. And I will remind the board as we start, town meeting is 3 weeks from tonight. You will be meeting in 2 weeks, so you do have time even beyond this evening in which to make your recommendations. And a couple of the articles, as you'll see, may go up to the night of the town meeting where the FinCom will have a meeting posted, and we traditionally post a meeting for the Board of Selectmen an hour ahead of the meeting just to do some last-minute business of items that just haven't been wrapped up at this point in time. So that's Article 1. Article 2 is collective bargaining agreements. I think we're going to pass over this article now because we have this later on in our agenda regarding the arbitration award on the firefighters. So we'll just skip that for this time and come back to it. Article 3 is the fiscal year proposed operating budget amendments. You see the numbers are blank at this point. The town accountant and I and Others are working with the department heads to sort of get up to current in terms of what adjustments we may need in the operating budget for the current year's budget that expires in 3 months. We know we're going to need some money in snow and ice, for example. We may need some money in municipal expenses and so forth, but we'll hopefully have that list finalized in 2 weeks. If not, it'd be the night of the town meeting. So there's no action, further discussion on Article 3 this evening. Article 4 is the Chelmsford Public Schools operating budget. The recommended funding amount is $59 million. The Finance Committee has supported this article by a 6-0 vote. School Committee has acted and had their budget hearing, and Dr. Lang is here in the audience this evening, and he's here, I'm sure, to answer any questions or concerns that you may have on the school department operating budget.
All right. Is there anyone here who would like to speak publicly about this particular warrant? Dr. Lang?
I don't have anything in particular to say. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Our recommendation that the school committee went through and appropriated or approved is in line with the town manager's recommendation, and we look forward to town meeting. Happy to answer any questions, but I don't have anything further.
What's the net increase over last year, percentage-wise, approximately?
It's
I
$2
don't have
million.
the percentage off the top of my head. It's a
$2
$2 million
million
increase.
$2 million increase. I think it's 3.5%, 3.51, if memory serves me correct.
Does the board have any questions for Dr. Lang?
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
The next article is the.
Are we gonna take recommendations now, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So, do we have a motion concerning this?
I would recommend we approve the $59 million budget, or the motion of the Article 4. Sorry.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
George?
Yeah,
5-0.
Thank you. Article 5 is the Nashoba Valley Technical School District fiscal year 2019 assessment. The requested amount voted by the Nashoba Valley District School Committee and certified is, for the town of Chelmsford, the assessment is $3,042,583 for the current fiscal year. The Finance Committee met and recommended this article on a 5-to-1 basis. And again, it falls in line with I know some of the members attended the budget breakfast and so forth, and it really hasn't changed since that date in February. So it's, in terms of what they're recommending, it is an enhanced budget for the town, and that's because of the fact that the town of Chelmsford enrollment in the Nashoba Tech has increased relative to the other communities. We actually picked up 7 students, whereas the district's enrollment actually for the member towns actually went down by 5 students. And so the $155,072 increase in the assessment, which is 5.37%, is how it equates with their budget. They pretty much have stood with the minimum assessment required under the Massachusetts Education Funding Law, known as Chapter 70, plus as an addition for the transportation charges, the capital debt service to the communities.
Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommended 5-to-1.
Do we have a motion on this warrant article?
I'll recommend approval of warrant article number 5.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Article 6 is the general government operating budget, and this will take a little bit longer because this is the one that I own in terms of in the community. The budget for the remainder of the town is roughly $65 million. See the various funding sources, $62.8 million from the levy, and then there's funding that comes in from the sewer capital fund, the sewer betterment fund, to pay the debt service on the sewer project, as well as you have user revenues for the enterprise funds such as PEG access, sewer, and the child care programs. If you go to the next slide, you see the individual appropriations by line item from the previous year, and again, all the categories remain unchanged. And to get into a little more detail of the budget on the next slide, it's essentially a level service operating budget. Staffing levels are stable. The capital and investment plan of the community remains at $3.3 million. The other post-employment benefits or retiree health insurance liability is maintained at $1 million. The priorities that were presented in the budget back in January, at the end of January, were education, public safety, which includes police, fire, DPW, capital infrastructure, and health and human services. You can see the budgetary line increases by percentage. You see, as we saw earlier, the schools are $2 million or 3.5%, and some of the smaller budgets, the numbers fluctuate on given years depending upon what's happening in a particular budget. Like, for example, municipal administration, you see that's a large increase, but what a third of that increase is the fact that we have three elections for the upcoming year. We have not only the town election that's every April, but in fiscal year 19 that starts July 1st, we have to operate and staff the state primary election, which is the day after Labor Day, and then we also have to staff the general election the first Tuesday in November. So that's how you sort of get these anomaly and fluctuations. Yeah, go ahead.
What state assessments at 11.5?
That is your state assessments in overlay. So in other words, as much as we also get state aid, we also are assessed by the state aid. So, for example, we get school choice and reimbursements for veterans benefits and so forth. We also get assessments for mosquito control, sending students to out-of-town districts such as charter schools and so forth. And I can go into a little more detail. And also the overlay is in that account as well. Overlay is the amount of money that we set aside for property tax abatements. In Massachusetts, we are under Proposition 2.5, and in that levy limit, you also have to include the money that will be refunded to taxpayers through betterments. So that's in that number as well.
Sorry to jump.
No, it's okay. No, it's all right. And also the public safety, you can see, does not include the contract settlements because under the town's bylaws, we cannot pre-fund a settlement. And you can see we'll take up one of those later this evening, but the two police ones are not included. So that would explain, well, why aren't you, if your priority is public safety, why is the public safety appropriation only going up 1.72%? And that's because there's no funding for contractual, because those are funded separately under state law and therefore are separate articles. So moving a little more detail, here are the major line item increases. You can see the schools, $2 million is the largest contributor because the schools are more than half the town's appropriated budget. Pension assessment to the Middlesex County retirement system is up by 6.47% or over $500,000. Health insurance premiums are up almost $300,000. Nashoba Tech, as we noted earlier, is $155,000. The fire department personnel services without the contract settlement is up by 2.39% or $128,000. We've budgeted an additional $114,500 for snow and ice removal. We have new solid waste recycling contracts, which have gone up in cost, so there's $84,000 or 3.25%. The state elections that I mentioned earlier, $68,900. Medicare tax, which is a tax on our payroll, is up 4.5% or $41,000. We have to fund the full year for the Director of Business Development. That was a position that was started remember this past fiscal year for the second half of the fiscal year. Now we include a full year's funding for that position. Animal Control Officer, we have a second Animal Control Officer that's in the budget, and we also have a part-time building inspector based on permit activity. That sort of drives the budget. And just take a little bit of time. Middlesex County retirement assessment, as you can see, for this coming year would be $8.3 million. As I just mentioned, it's a $500,000 increase of 6.47%. And just to take a moment to look into the weeds of this one, the thing to note is that fifth column, which is called payment on unfunded liability. You can see that the payment on the unfunded liability for the upcoming fiscal year is $6,869,383. So you can see of the $8.3 million assessment, $6.8 million of that goes to the payment on the unfunded liability. And you can just see how that number just grows over time. So our normal cost, which is the first column, is rather steady. It's the unfunded liability, and that liability remains in place through 2035. And the reason it increases is a couple things are going on. One, they continue to update the actuarial tables to recognize the life span of people who are in the system, which obviously is extended. They also have to reflect the fact of what are the returns on the investments in the retirement system. They basically are assuming a rate of return of 7.65%. Obviously, that's not achieved on every year, and so that's evaluated every 2 years. And then obviously it's based on your payroll and retirees going in. So you can see just how that number grows. But under state law, we're required to fund this obligation by 2035 in the Middlesex system, and therefore that's a big driver to our budget. And then if you go to the next slide, you can just see the liability that's there. Right now, our liability has grown. You can see it's $96 million liability. It went up by 8.95% or $7.9 million. And so you can see the unfunded portion of that was $466,000 increase. So again, people wonder what drives the budget. This is a big contributor to that. So the other big one that I mentioned earlier is the other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, or retiree healthcare liability. We do an actuarial study of that in accordance with state law. We have to do it every 2 years. The last one was done January 1st, 2017. Our liability was established at that point as $77.2 million. The current trust fund balance is only $6.3 million. We're proposing $1 million, which would only be 50% of the portion that we should set aside if we would eliminate this liability in a 30-year period. The difference here from the pension one is under state law, we have to fund the pension liability. There is no state law requiring funding of OPEB liability. It is required to be reported in your financial statements, and progressive communities such as Chelmsford are at least putting some funding towards this liability.
One question?
Yes.
So, do a lot of towns fund that?
Yes. Right now, it's more and more common. Our towns similar to Chelmsford are funding it. Now, if you're a town like Wellesley, they're funding the full arc. I mean, they're actually paying this thing down over a 30-year period. Mm-hmm. But towns like Chelmsford, such as Westford and other communities similar to us, tend to fund a portion of it. Our case, we're about 50%. It varies, but towns our size are making a significant or
And if you don't fund it,
yeah,
what does that hurt?
If you don't fund it, it throws up you're kicking the can down the road. You're pushing the liability even further to those coming after you. It then also reflects poorly on your bond rating. It also reflects poorly on your assessment, because again, these liabilities are assuming a rate of return on the investment in the trust funds. So if you're not putting into the trust fund, you're not. It's sort of like compounded interest.
Reverse compound interest.
Reverse compounded interest, exactly. So that's the unfortunate story on liabilities. On debt service, the story is better. We go out and borrow every year. We'll be out borrowing this year. The last borrowing credit rated agency from Standard & Poor's, which was June of 2017, noted that overall the town's debt is low at 1.8% of market value, and over 84% of our direct debt is scheduled to be repaid within 10 years, which are positive credit factors. So you can see the next slide, the debt service for the town that's not excluded is decreasing slightly by almost 1% to $7.5 million. And then the excluded debt service, you can see, is dropping as well to $4.3 million in 19. So that's the story with debt. Obviously, the difference in why you say, why are we so accelerated with the debt cycle? It's because of the fact that we really don't have a major project on the books. I mean, if you can imagine what would happen if you took on a school project. That would basically double that, and also the school projects tend to go out for 20 to 30 years. So that sort of explains our debt position and so forth. So that's the story on debt. In terms of government employees, as I mentioned earlier, employment is stable. The low point was 10 years ago. You remember we hit the recession, we had mid-year local aid cuts, and the low point of the town's employee base was fiscal year 2009. What we've seen basically since the last few years has been pretty steady, around 240, 245 employees. So that's the story on our employee base. In terms of the revenue side, again, the news isn't great. The allowed 2.5% increase under Proposition 2.5 is $2.34 million. We project $1.2 million in new growth from capital investment in the community. Excess levy capacity was there from last year of $79,000. We're only estimating an increase based on the governor's budget of $293,000 or 1.74% in state aid. Local receipts, would go up by 1.46% or $150,000, and then miscellaneous available funds would go up by $44,000. So the question we're often asked is, we heard earlier this evening, gee, the average single-family tax bill in the community, or taxes are high at $71.75. We provide this breakdown, so if you took that $71.75 and allocated it across the different departments in terms of where the funding goes, and obviously you can see the largest operation we have are schools. So 44% of that levy would go towards the schools, or almost $3,200. The next largest one are benefits and insurance. 18% of our budget, or almost $1,300 of that $71.75 goes towards benefits and insurance. Debt service is $800, and then you start going next into public safety, $700, and so forth. The average bill, we talked about it earlier, and you heard it in the comment. This year's ranking is 65. One would be the highest average single-family tax bill in the state. That's community of Weston, and you get on your Wellesleys, your Dovers, and so forth. You can see our ranking of 65 is roughly where we've been. It's, if you go back to 2003, 15 years ago, we were 61st. Then it was 67 10 years ago. I'm sorry, 62 10 years ago. And then we've been around the 70, high 60 mark. I can tell you the difference between 65 and 70 is less than $100. So you're in that area. The sad story is yes, taxes are going up in Chelmsford, but they're going up everywhere across the state. And you can see it's not insignificant. The 5-year increase is over 23%, or $1,376 for that $400,000 assessed house that's now in the average in the community. And the 15-year increase is 81%, or $3,227. If you look towards state aid, the disappointment there under state aid, Chapter 70, you can see that number only goes up by just over $100,000. The governor's budget only provides $20 per student to the community. You may have seen some information on social media and the print media about percentage of state aid by community. In fact, our increase was little above the $20 per student, and that was because of the fact that when we enrolled the full-day kindergarten, we got credit for that student base, which is greater than a half-day kindergarten. Now that that's gone into the system, we'll continue to flow whatever the minimum foundation requirement required and recommended by the governor and the legislature. I anticipate that the legislature will probably fund Chapter 70 aid beyond what the governor proposed, particularly in an election year. We've seen that. But as you'll see in the discussion later this evening, that's sort of already in the back of our minds and will be accounted for given the liabilities that are still out there. The other big thing of state aid is general government aid of $5 million. That's your lottery aid, additional assistance. That number has been growing at 3.5% and equal to the growth in the state budget, whereas the Chapter 70 aid has really lagged that. So that's really the big numbers that come out. And you can see the other aid we get is school choice tuition, I mentioned earlier, exemptions for veterans and benefits, $211,000 for the statutory requirement under state law. And then we get a nominal amount for the limited amount of state-owned land in the community and so forth.
Yeah. So your comment on the Chapter 70 funding, is that a one-time bump this year, or is that a bump permanent now?
It'll be permanent, but it'll be in the base. In other words, this
We'll
year,
calculate the increase, it won't
right? This
show
year
up,
we
but-
saw an increase in the Chelmsford schools enrollment and the Chapter 70, and that's driven by the fact that we've got full-day kindergarten. But now that'll get normalized into the process, so you won't have that
Won't see an
variable
increase.
in the
Right.
year ahead. And under local receipts, $10.45 million, or an increase of $150,000. The big driver there is motor vehicle excise tax. It's half of the local receipts, or $5 million. And that number, as you can see, has proven strong in the last couple of years, and what we've seen thus far this year. What we think is happening is the fact that people are leasing cars seems to be keeping that healthy. But again, that's a commodity that if the economy tightens, that can be postponed and delayed. So that's why it's a nervous number that you have. It tends to be cyclical with the economy. The other big one you see driving in there is meals tax, $625,000. As you can see, that number has grown in the last 5 years. On the flip side, we're lagging in the hotel tax, and even this year the number's dropping. You can see our peak was $495. We're down to $424 last year, and we'll probably be less than that this year. Part of that's due to the fact that we've
They've
had the
been
hotels
renovating.
closed for renovations. So hopefully once all that work is complete, that will bump up. And And the other one is permits. You can see we're on a 4-year unprecedented wave where permit activity has exceeded $1 million in town. Prior to that, you can see the numbers, and even looking way before that. And we anticipate with some of the projects that are permitted, particularly the housing projects and hopefully the economic development projects on 129, that will remain strong. And then ultimately, those permits should drive into increased new growth, but it's not there yet. So that's on the local permit side. And then the last one, and I'll stop, is available funds. These are the miscellaneous items. You can see there's a transfer now, for those who follow it real closely in terms of funding for the sewer project. We're weaning off of the sewer betterment funding source and now onto the capital improvement fund. So that's the first year we've switched over to that under the sewer debt repayment plan. So that's the budget in a nutshell.
What's the sewer capital improvement fund?
That's the surcharge that gets put on the fees when the community went away from doing debt exclusions for funding the final phases of the sewer project. Instead, it went on to a surcharge on the sewer bills that is dedicated just for the payment of the debt service. So
In theory, when the debt goes away, that
will
comes
go
off
away
the
as
bills.
well. Yeah, and that's got another decade or so.
Yes, 10 years.
Yeah, before to go. And the Finance Committee recommends this budget unanimously, 6-0.
All right, do we have a motion concerning this warrant, item number 6?
I forgot where we were, that was so long. I'd like to recommend approval of Article 6.
I second it.
We have first and second. Is there any discussion? Being none, we have a vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you.
All right, things will go a little quicker now. Reserve fund is the amount that's set aside for the Finance Committee to provide for extraordinary and unforeseen expenses. This year, as has been the case in recent years, the request is $400,000, which is basically 0.30% of the $132 million operating budget. Finance Committee recommends this at 6-0.
What's an example of what this would be used for?
It's when you're outside of town meetings, for example, you have a damage to a vehicle that gets totaled. You have an extraordinary circumstance that runs in terms of an operation in the town department that happens between the months of May and June, usually. And again, it's meant to avoid having to call a special town meeting. So generally, in recent history, we've tended to hold it till the spring, and then we will appropriate from it at spring town meeting, and then keep a balance to get you till June. So for this current year, we may use that to fund some of the snow and ice deficit and so forth. The idea is that you're recognizing that you're gonna have some unforeseen activities, and therefore, in a full budgeting cost, you set aside a nominal amount to meet those expenses that have come in.
So in the past, would the town meeting have to vote on those expenses?
Yeah, they're
And
brought
now-
before town meeting. It's an available funding source.
Right, but-
Once town meeting is adjourned, then the FinCom holds that fund, continues to hold that fund from May and June in case something arises at the end of the fiscal year. For example, if there was a significant fire in the community,
Right.
and you had a major rollout in terms of fire response and so forth, and that sort of was not forecast in the budget projection going forward, that could fund that type of activity. As I said, if there was.
But in the past, how did we do it?
If we're at town meeting, we know it, we fund it.
Right.
If we're out of town meeting, the Finance Committee then meets and recommends it, and they have the control of that funding source. If it's not utilized, it goes back to the Treasury and becomes the free cash for the next year.
So this doesn't avoid town meeting voting on something? or-
Right. No.
Okay.
That's voted every year, though.
All right, every year every year it's been funded at, and it's been $400,000, I think, for 8 or 9 years now.
All right, do we have a motion as to a recommendation on this warrant item?
I would I would recommend approval of warrant article number 7.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 The Article 8
I vote.
is a special education reserve fund. Dr. Lang is still here. This is coming up at the school committee meeting 2 weeks from Tuesday. And what this is again, it's to set aside funds for unanticipated or unbudgeted costs of special education, be it out-of-district tuition, transportation costs, and then there has to be a funding source to put money into the fund. The Finance Committee supports the creation of the fund. We're awaiting the school committee's action in terms of the available amounts of funding that would be put into the fund in the upcoming year. I don't know if Jay has any further comment on this to the board, if the board has any questions. But the idea, once again, and we've seen this in the experience in the community, again, we've been working on a budget that will be voted at the end, basically, let's say May 1st, we leave town meeting, for a school year that's going to start, the following September and run through the following July. And what we've seen, particularly during the summer months or even during the course of the year, you could have people move in or out of the community that may have extraordinary costs. And this is an idea of, again, having a reserve. If this fund is established, to expend money from this reserve fund would require a vote of the school committee and the Board of Selectmen to move funds out of this account.
This is the first time this has been before.
Yeah, this came out of municipal reform bill of 2015, and this would be this would be now the town of Chelmsford accepting that provision of the law and setting aside funds to meet unbudgeted costs of special education.
Why the cross-out?
What's that? Oh, because we don't know the available funds. We just don't know what that's going to be at this point.
When will the number be set?
Probably at that school committee meeting on the 2 weeks from tomorrow. We're just, it's really two actions. We fully support establishing the fund because, again, this is a new opportunity for us to have a reserve fund. We haven't had that in the past. So we think that's a good practice. And we're trying to actually look at some of the reimbursement that we're going to be receiving from Valley Collaborative, which is our member collaborative for special ed programming. We have some money that's coming back from them, so we think it's a good opportunity to put away a little bit of money for a future unanticipated expense if it were to come forward. So the first motion is really to set up the fund, and then secondly, I'm going to be working with the school committee to figure out a dollar amount that we can actually then recommend be appropriated to that fund.
Do you have any idea at this point of maybe a high and low of where that number might be?
Well, I think we look at this as one of a couple of different areas where the school committee can set aside some funding for special ed costs. So this will certainly be one, and it's been a new fund that we haven't had the access to in the past, which is great. The only other area the school committee can really set aside funds is through the circuit breaker account for special ed costs. And I've been talking for really a couple of years at this point about trying to build up approximately $1.5 million based on our current budget and our current spending. We would want to have, I think, about $1.5 million set aside for any kind of unusual or unanticipated cost related to special education in years to come. So right now in circuit breaker at the end of last year, we had approximately $800,000 over the last 2 years that we've been able to set aside. So our goal between the two funds, because you wouldn't want to have $1.5 million in both funds, our goal between the two funds would be to have a total of about $1.5 million set aside. So I'm looking, again, through one of these two funding sources of probably trying to put another $500,000 aside this year to get close to that $1.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
How much you taking in for out of district right now?
How much?
Yeah, the out of district tuition you bringing in right now. You know?
In terms of school choice.
Oh, through school choice?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It was on a
Sorry, we
previous
have about 50 students. So it's approximately 250. Well, because that includes the, there's a special education factor in there as well. I think the base figure is about $250,000.
So part of that.
No, that's still totally separate.
Won't be part
That's
of
for
this.
regular education. This is really for special education costs. So this fund, if we did have, say, a student we didn't budget for, say a student would move in next fall, and we have to pay a tuition for that student, the other luxury of this particular fund is you can pay for transportation as well, because oftentimes it can be costly to transport special education students, particularly if they're going to out-of-district placements. So this fund will give us that flexibility. But somewhere between this fund and circuit breaker, I'd want to have $1.5 million set aside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, do we have a motion as a recommendation of this warrant article?
Do you want to hold off till we get the dollar amount? You'll have to
Yeah,
revisit. You'll have to revisit
We
it.
can do it at the next meeting.
Sure.
We'll have it at the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Well, you'll probably have it the night of town meeting,
Okay.
because their next meeting
Yeah.
is the night following your next meeting. Okay. Article 9 is the capital budget. John Souza is the chair of the capital budget. The appropriated amount this year is $3,280,571. You have in front of you the list of capital items that go from school technology to the resurfacing of the high school parking lot to DPW roads and so forth, to public safety investment in a microwave radio network and so forth. Again, John's here to answer questions. The Capital Plan Committee met from November to early December, made its unanimous recommendations. Those were presented in January it was actually presented at the tri-board meeting and then presented in the budget and following that in January, and basically has remained, impact since that time. So again, John's here and some department heads are here if you have any particular questions regarding the capital budget.
All right.
Oh, Finance Committee recommended it 6-0, I'm sorry.
John, would you mind stepping up?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
This number, the gross number is pretty consistent with previous years.
It is, for the past, I'm going to say at least 3 to 4 years, we're always in the neighborhood of around, 3.1 to 3.3 million, and we usually have some other funding sources that we use to defray the amount. For example, in the past, before the Municipal Modernization Act was passed, you would sometimes see us bring before town meeting and ask the body to vote to appropriate bond premiums, which are one-time monies that we earn when we sell bonds. That's gone away because we do a different approach now. If we do receive bond premiums, we lower the new value, what they call the par amount of the bonds, so we're no longer holding these premiums. What we do have this year is we have about 180,000 of what we call recaptured funds, which are funds you may have heard me talk about in the past. They're from prior year capital projects that have been completed, and they were completed under budget. So basically, if you're doing a building project and you budgeted $200,000 for it, and the cost was finished at 180, you'd have 20,000 of recaptured funds. So that's where this 180 comes in.
And when you determine the work on the list, is there any consideration for timing in terms of they're all being worked on at the same time, the money is all flowing out continually, or is there any kind of phasing of different projects so the money is laid out over time?
Right. To answer that, what we do, we borrow usually late June, so we have a bond issuance, and so the money flows into the Treasury in early July, usually. And different projects ramp up at different schedules. For example, all of your school projects, I know Gary Persichetti's here tonight. As Gary can tell you, a lot of the school building projects are done. He works in coordination with school administration to do a lot of that work in the summer when the students are out of the building. So other projects, for example, a DPW vehicle, if it's something they're buying off the state bid list, which is a cooperative procurement, they don't have to spend a lot of time speccing it out to buy a dump truck with a plow. That's something they can do pretty fast, probably within 30 to 60 days if they know the vehicle or the type of equipment they're buying. So they ramp up at different times. What we do is we borrow the money towards the beginning of the fiscal year because it would be expensive to go back to the bond market more than once during that year. So we borrow the money and knowing pretty much the schedule, but they can ramp up at different, on different schedules.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion as to recommendation of this warrant article?
I would recommend approval of warrant article number 9.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I vote.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Article 10 is the Sewer Enterprise Fund. This, again, an enterprise fund for those watching in the room and at home as well, is a self-contained accounting entity. That means that the money that's raised for sewer fees only are expended for sewer fees, and it stays as its own fund, it's its own fund balance, accounted for separately. This year, the amount funding for the town's sewer enterprise operations for the upcoming fiscal year is $3,900,596. And again, those funds are not raised from the tax levy, they're raised from sewer enterprise revenues or your sewer bills. This budget actually is a decrease of over $200,000, or minus 4.93% for the upcoming fiscal year. So the good news is for the third consecutive year, there'll be no increase in sewer rates in the community. The decrease reflected a capital investment that was at one time in the previous year that we're in right now, and that diminishes. So it's good news for sewer operations, and the Finance Committee recommends this article by a 6-0 vote.
All right, do we have a motion as a recommendation on this warrant article?
I will make a motion to recommend approval of warrant article number 10.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I vote.
Article 11 is this sewer pump station upgrade. Much as we talk about the new sewer system in town, parts of the sewer system are a generation old, and so periodically, as we've seen in some recent years at Progress Ave and other locations, we have having to come in and do some station upgrades. This request this year is $180,000 from Sewer Enterprise Fund balance, which is their own free cash, to upgrade the Milland Avenue and Weston Avenue sewer pump stations, to basically make sure those buildings are weather tight and the pumps are functional. Finance Committee recommends this article by a 6-0 vote.
All right, do we have a motion as to a recommendation on this warrant article?
I'll make a motion to recommend warrant article number 11.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Paul, quick question.
Yes.
What's it, approximately, if you know off the top of your head, what does a new pump station run?
Depends on the size of the station. Yeah, Gary's here in the room, it's her in the back. Depends on the size of the station.
I'm just wondering how much
Steve,
of an overhaul is this? Is this just a
Do you want to
minor or major?
minor?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're not gonna.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I vote.
Okay, thank you. Article 12 is a new enterprise fund this year, and it reflects the fact that the town, as of just over a month ago, is the owner of the Chelmsford Forum. With the completion of the acquisition, the enabling legislation for operations from the state goes away because of the fact that we've acquired the asset and the legislation is satisfied. So now we have to establish an enterprise fund. So what this article does, it establishes the enterprise fund. So again, being a self-contained operating entity, much like the golf course, where the forum will have its own accounting fund and separate focus. And as you know, the board awarded a contract at the last meeting for the management starting this July 1st. The estimated budget for that is $110,000 to operate the enterprise fund for the year. And again, it comes from the forum enterprise fund revenues are essentially the lease of the management lease for the operation of the forum. So again, this is not from the tax levy. And the Finance Committee recommends this article by a 6-0 vote.
Do we have a motion, recommendation on the warrant article number 12, the Chelmsford Forum Enterprise Fund?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend article number 12.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I vote.
Article 13 is the PEG Access Enterprise Fund. PEG, the acronym for Public Educational and Government Access, are basically your cable access stations. Again, this is a self-contained fund. It does not come from the tax levy. It comes from the surcharge on cable television invoices in the community from the two carriers, Verizon and Comcast. This is the second year of this enterprise fund. And you can see that the personnel services are $380,495, and the expenses are $352,150 for a total of $732,645. Basically, this is level service operations for the upcoming year. And again, this does not come from the levy. It comes from the 4.5% assessment on the Comcast and Verizon bills. And the Finance Committee recommends this article by a 6-0 vote.
Do we have a motion to a recommendation on this warrant article?
Make a motion to Actually, we'll recommend approval of warrant article number 13.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
And finally, the last enterprise fund is the Golf Course Enterprise Fund. Again, this is a minor fund. It's only a $30,000 enterprise fund on an annual basis. This comes from the management fees for the operation of the golf course and the clubhouse facility, for the rental agreement for the manager down there. The budget is unchanged from the prior fiscal year. And Finance Committee recommends this 6-0 as well.
Do we have a motion to recommendation on this warrant article?
I'd recommend the Board of Selectmen approve article number 14 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Article 15 is another requirement under state law. We have to vote the annual funding, expenditure amounts for the departmental revolving funds. What this is basically, these are self-funding funds that which the revenue comes in by a sale or a license or activity, and then they're expended in the course of a year. So these funds have been established in accordance with the provisions of state law. They're accounted for by the town accountant, each as its own separate fund, and annually we have to reauthorize the total amount of expenditures for each fund. These amounts are unchanged from the current fiscal year. So, for example, the senior citizen trip program is $75,000. People visit the senior center, they go on trips to various destinations. The money that's collected then gets expended to pay the providers to do that service. And seal and weights and measures, for example, the gas pumps and the scales and the scanners at the stores, we actually subcontract with the Northern Middlesex Council of Government. They provide the inspection services. The fees that are paid for those inspections go to reimburse NIMCOG for their inspection services. So that's the nature of these activities, and again, they're unchanged from the current year. Finance Committee recommends this 6-0.
So where does the fire life safety equipment, where's that money come from?
That money comes in from the from the sale of the, help me with this one, Gary.
Yeah, I'll help you. The sale of any type of equipment like old thermal imaging cameras, old defibrillators, that money comes back in fire life.
Right. We just established that one a couple of years ago.
Oh, I didn't know we sold those things.
And the same thing with the police cruiser one, is you turn in an old cruiser, that money goes to equip the new cruisers, so.
Are you using that auction website to do it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I see it on there, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, do we have a motion to a recommendation on this warrant article?
I would recommend the Board of Selectmen approve article number 15 of the town warrant.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Okay, Article 16 is the creation of a new revolving fund from the Cemetery Commission. This would establish a cemetery wreath/floral decorations revolving fund in which the cemetery director would spend monies paid from the sale of wreaths and floral decorations to pay for such wreaths and floral decorations for the upcoming fiscal year. And the estimated revenue and expenditures from such fund is $10,000. The most notable one in this was the wreaths that was done at Christmas time this past year. David Boyle wants to continue that, but also even offer an opportunity to provide that on other events, during the course of the year. So this would basically perpetuate that and memorialize that into a revolving fund.
Should do flags at July 4th.
Yeah, I mean, well, we provide grave flags for veterans, at Memorial Day and Veterans Day and so forth. This would be, if somebody wanted to come in and say, geez, I'd like to have flowers at my parents' grave on Mother's Day, for those type of things, then there is no provision in a mass law that unless a fund is created, those monies can't be expended unless it goes through the cycle. So the idea is to take them in as a revolving fund and allow them to be expended. Otherwise, any money that's received has to go to the Treasury and then has to be certified as a revenue the following fiscal year. So it's sort of the nuances of accounting in Massachusetts system.
So I have a question. How would that actually work? I mean, would they contract with somebody to do this, the cemetery commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, if it's large scale, I mean, the ones with the wreaths at Christmas, that was a huge undertaking in terms of, it was great, the volunteers, who helped, distribute them, but then you've got to remove them and dispose of them afterwards. And so in some cases, we may use contractors to do that work. Or we may use a company to come in and actually provide in place the flowers and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, there's some things that cemetery workers can do, but some of it is just raw materials, i.e. wreaths and
Yeah.
floral arrangements and so forth.
Is it specifically just for wreaths and flowers? Or could it be,
That's why it's word wreaths and floral decorations. I think anything in that, venue would qualify.
I only ask because I know on my father's grave, people want to put perpetual lights, those are and they have solar ones now, and they have,
I'm sure that David will make accommodations.
Yeah.
I think they have those in some of our cemeteries. If you go by the one on Main Street.
Those may be privately
right,
provided.
but I would have to go
Right.
out to Concord every week and replace the candle or make sure the battery was checked. But I'm wondering if we could offer service where he makes sure they're all running for a monthly fee.
Do we have a motion as a recommendation for Article 16?
I would recommend the Board of Selectmen approve Article 16 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. By vote?
Article 17 is the traditional cemetery article, and this is to transfer funds from the sale of graves of lots to the improvements and development at the cemetery, notably the continuation of the expansion project at the cemetery. This year, the amount requested is $50,000 to continue that project. And again, the money from this is not the tax levy, it's for people who purchase graves and lots. A portion of that money then goes to perpetual care, but also a portion of it also goes to the improvement and development and expansion of the cemetery. Finance Committee recommends this 6-0.
Do we have a motion as to recommendation of Article 17?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve Article 17 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. By vote?
Okay, Article 18 is another almost annual article right now. The Community Action Program Fund, we appropriate $10,000 to provide matching funds for community improvement projects undertaken by individuals or organizations within the town. Usually these are used by matching funds, grant awards for projects. This fund has been in place for over 20 years. There have been over 100 projects funded, totaling over $100,000. Examples are the Harmony Park renovation work, Eagle Scout projects across the community and so forth. Finance Committee recommends this at 6-0 vote. I think our current fund balance in this fund is around $4,000, so it really won't get us through the next year. So we periodically come in and ask for a $10,000 appropriation.
Do you have a motion as a recommendation on Article 18?
I would make a motion to recommend approval of Article 18 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
By vote?
Thank you. Article 19 is a rescission of authorized but unissued debt. This represents the final step in the modular classroom building project. The $7.9 million was authorized by this project back at the October 17, 2016 fall annual town meeting. When all is said and done, there'll be $1 million that we did not borrow enough for will not be expended on the project. So what we need to do is formally go back to town meeting and clear this off the books, because otherwise it's authorized and unissued. So it's seen as a potential liability for the town. So this would basically clean that up and close this project. And again, the good news is early on they anticipated the available surplus, and then the project has come to completion. And so what this does is, again, it just removes the authorization for this for the balance of the $1 million that was unnecessary for the project.
We used the million for the
But
forum.
it was unissued, so we never borrowed the $1 million.
that
It was
was-
still there on the books.
Okay.
The money from the forum came from the sewer.
Right, that was from the stormwater.
Rain.
Stormwater was for the forum. That case, that was authorized and issued.
And issued, so we might as well use it.
Right, this one is authorized but unissued, so it's on
So
the
it's
books.
kind of a paper transaction.
Exactly, but it's an important one, because otherwise it sits on your book as a debt commitment of the town.
Shows up like an open line of credit.
Right, exactly.
So it
Right,
drags
exactly.
down your debt rating.
Right. Finance Committee recommends 6-0.
Do you have a motion as to a recommendation on Article 19?
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 19 of the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Paul, do we get a final accounting?
There are still a couple of punch items left, but it's almost
Minor.
6.9 million. Yeah, it's minor. It's yeah.
Like,
Not
How much left?
What do you got left?
I think we've got about $175,000 in the account at this point.
Yeah.
We have not paid them all in.
Yeah, so but at the end of the day, it's a nominal amount that's left.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. Okay.
Do we have a motion as to recommendation on Article 19? That was
Made
discussion,
it.
yes.
Yep, sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you. Article 20 is the Community Preservation Committee annual article. Linda Prescott was hoping to be here this evening, but she's a little under the weather, and so Darlene's here. I'm sure she'll help me and others. But the bottom line is under this article, we hear the report from the Community Preservation Committee. We then have to appropriate funds for the debt service for the projects that were already committed from prior years that have a multi-year lifespan. We also set aside $50,000 to the administrative expenses for the committee for the current year, and set the funds in reserve. So if you go into the slides, you'll see that the estimated surcharge for the fund is $1,124,000 from the property tax levy, and then the estimated state revenue is only $155,000. So we estimate we'll get $1.279 million in community preservation funds for the upcoming year, and we are required to set aside 10% of that funding for each of the allocated uses. Open space, historical, community housing, and budgeted reserve would be the balance. And in terms of the existing debt they were paying off, we thought it would be worth to show you what's out there. The town hall project, the debt service for this current year for the north and center town halls, the $2.8 million bond, the debt service for this year is $310,719. That will be paid off, as you can see, in fiscal '21. So we're nearing the end of that project. Sheehan Farm, that was a $785,000 acquisition. The debt service is $93,900. That will be paid off in 5 years in 2023. Chelmsford Woods, which is the David Hedison's and the Housing Authority and Choice project on Littleton Road, that is phase 2 is under construction. If you're up in that area now by the asphalt plant area. Mobile home park, that is a $1.5 million bond. Again, the debt service this year is $140,375. That still has a decade remaining in that debt. The Turf Fields is a $1.2 million bond. That also has a decade to go. This year, the debt service on that is $108,700. Varney Playground is a $124,000 bond for the Phase 1 project that was out there. You see that's a nominal amount of $15,281, and that goes to 2025. And then the most recent one, as voted last year, was Roberts Field. Those bonds will be issued this June when John goes to market following the actions from town meeting. The estimate at this point is a $63,000 debt service payment, and again, that would be 10 years. So you can see our debt service for the Community Preservation Fund is $731,000 for the upcoming year. And as you can see, we have just over 1.279 of total revenues. And what you can't do is you can't borrow in anticipation of the state amount, because the state amount varies over time and diminishes. So that's where we're at, and the Finance Committee recommends this article by a 6-0 vote.
Do we have a motion as to recommendation on this warrant article number 20?
Make a motion to recommend Article 20 of the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well, quick question.
Yep.
If on town halls, for instance, the town found that they had $600,000 and decided to prepay that, could you?
Sure, but it would depend upon, I shouldn't be so quick on that. It would depend upon the language in the bond in terms of a prepayment penalty. John, do you know if you could accelerate that? It may depend on each individual note.
Right, I don't have that information with me today, but I could look into it for you, but it basically would depend on what the town manager is referring to as if there's a call date. So for example, if you buy a bond, there's a call date, the issuer can then call it back. It'd almost be like prepaying.
Right.
But the problem is, if it doesn't have a call date, you can't do that because like we're looking at it as the issuer tonight. But if you're looking at it as the investor, and I buy a bond from you to hold as an investment, it causes a problem, because then if you pay it down early and they don't have that expectation, they're going to lose their interest. So that's why they have those call dates provisions.
And call bonds are usually a little bit more money.
Right, exactly. So we would have to, right, we'd be paying the investor a higher interest rate to have those call.
I was just curious if you knew we had it.
Do we have a motion as a recommendation on Article 20?
We made it.
Oh, sorry. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We did, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 21 is the Community Preservation Recreational Capital Fund. This is replenishment of the fund that the Preservation Committee funds to fund small projects that occur during the course of the year at $50,000. And Finance Committee recommends this by a 6-0 vote. As you may be aware, the committee keeps small funds as recreational capital, open space capital, and so forth, in which to support minor projects that come up during the course of a calendar year.
We have a motion as a recommendation on Article 21.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 21 of the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question. Do they have any prospects that they'd be spending that on that they know about at this point?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. I mean, if they had a significant project, like you'll see the next article, such as the Byham School, we'd bring it to town meeting for an appropriation. This is the fact that their fund is almost depleted, and so they just don't have the ability to say, you know, if something comes up, they wouldn't be able to meet it. So they periodically monitor the balances with the town accountant to see, well, where are we in said funds? And right now, this one is down pretty low.
Sometimes it's like, sometimes the Boy Scouts, like, will come forward to them to do a small project, an Eagle Scout project or something, and that's what they would pay for.
Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. By vote?
And then the final community preservation article is the appropriation for a project funded by the Community Preservation Fund. This is to for reconstruct the playground at the Byham Elementary School in conjunction with the PTO, and the contribution from the Community Preservation Fund is $75,000. And the Finance Committee recommends this by a 6-0 vote.
Do we have a motion as a recommendation on Article 22?
Make a motion to recommend Article 22 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Article 23 is a land transfer. This is a 9.89 acre parcel located off of Technology Drive. And what it would do is, if this was acquired for tax delinquency, and you can see the parcel's wet. It's real wet. It's that's why we get such a parcel. It's not buildable. The Conservation Commission has expressed interest in saving it as conservation land, sort of as a sanctuary, undisturbed area. It's right on the Lowell line. If you were to go down Technology Drive heading towards Drum Hill, it's that last parcel on the left is vacant, but it's behind that, and it goes into the area behind Augusta Way, and that other side, almost by, as you're heading towards the UMass Lowell campus. The parcel, you know, had a nominal amount of taxes on it, and basically, once the project and everything was completed, they quickly realized there's no need to be paying taxes on a parcel that's undevelopable and unusable. And so therefore, there's really no resale prospects by the town. So again, we transfer this to the Conservation Commission, for conservation purposes. And, you know, the Finance Committee supports this by a 6-0 vote.
Do we have a motion as to recommendation on Article 23?
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 23 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
The next one is a parcel off of Oak Hill Road. It's 1.72 acres. And again, this would be transferring it to the conservation for conservation purposes. This abuts the Oak Hill parcel, as you see on the map. It's right at the end of what the paper street would be there. So the large parcel underneath it is what we refer to as the Oak Hill property that is now in the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission. So now that that has all been completed and the trails have been set up, the commission has asked that we transfer this other parcel over to them because it adjoins the the conservation corridor.
This-
Finance Committee recommends 6-0 on this.
This is
as well.
currently owned by the town?
This is,
that correct?
yes, currently owned by the town. As you can see, it's mostly wet, and again, it was held up at the time when we did the bunch of parcels several years back because of the whole unique nature of the Oak Hill, where a town meeting voted to set aside for conservation. The selectmen had it with the special committee, and now it's converted to conservation. And now that that's complete, Chairman McLaughlin and the Conservation Commission have now asked that we add this parcel to that piece of conservation land.
Do we have a motion as a recommendation on Article 24?
I'll make a motion to approve Article 24 of the town meeting warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
There's one more question, too.
Yeah.
Can you show me where on that map the solar project is that they're gonna put in over there?
Oh,
Is that
that's not
here?
on Oak Hill, that's the Swain Road landfill.
Okay, all right,
That's
the other side,
separate.
okay,
Yep.
okay, that's why. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
The next article, Article 25, is the zoning article that's put on the warrant by the planning board. And this was meant to be a correctional article by the planning board that followed their first project in which they actually utilized the overlay district. And so the changes in language are in the next slide, which are the underlined portions of the language. It's just to make clear that the multifamily units are allowed on portions of the district that fall within the BAOD overlay district, and that multifamily residential units are not allowed in the zoning district that's not within that district. So again, when they interpreted they just wanted to make clarity that this, and so they thought it was important to bring it back to town meeting just to clarify that with the underlying language. Finance Committee recommends this 6-0. Planning Board obviously recommends it. And again, it's really seen as a clarification article and has no, substantive change to the zoning bylaw that's been adopted by the community.
Do we have a motion as to Article 25?
I'd make a motion to approve Article 25 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Article 26 is a citizen petition zoning article amendment that's submitted by Christine Bowman and Brian Latina, who are Precinct 4 representatives. This is a substantive change to the bylaws as indicated in the underlying language. I am not going to even attempt to explain the nature of this article. You've had the petitioners here before you on multiple occasions. What I can report to you is that the Finance Committee recommended against this article by a 6-0 vote, and the Planning Board also recommended against this article. That's all I'm going to say at this point.
Do we have a motion and a recommendation for Article 26?
You gotta make a motion, we can defend.
You recommend not approval, because you can recommend
one.
against. I mean, that's, we
Yeah,
asked the town meeting, what's your recommendation? It's either for or against.
I tried to read this article and went through it over and over, couldn't figure it out, so I guess I'll make a motion not to recommend Article 26 for the town warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I guess I would agree. I mean, it sounds like the intent is there, but the way it's written is not something that I can support at this point.
I would agree. I couldn't figure it out either.
And I don't have any I've been to all the planning board meetings, sat through all these, and I sort of have to rely on the value of the advice of the planning board, too. They're the experts in this.
Any further discussion?
Town council also weighed in on this, didn't they?
Well, he helped them with the legal form. He doesn't weigh in an opinion.
Not on this one, but on,
No, not on none of those. He basically helped the petitioner get it into a proper legal form.
That's what I meant,
Right,
okay. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0 against.
Article 26 is another citizen petition article. This has to do with a general bylaw amendment to change the conflict of interest.
27.
I'm sorry, 27. It's a rather lengthy article. As you can see, it goes on for several paragraphs. We're dealing with conflict of interest. The Finance Committee recommended 6-0. against approval of this article that was submitted by Brian Latina, Precinct 4 representative. And again, Mr. Latina has been before this board as well.
Do we have a motion in reference to Article 27?
I'll make a motion against Article 27 of the town warrant.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We have a
Hey.
motion and a second?
I'll make just a quick discussion. I understand what Brian was doing here. I followed it through. There are a few issues that I took in there, and then the last one where the result was an apology, to me just seemed like,
Well, I can understand his logic, but it's very confusing, and then in the end, there's no real penalty.
yeah, just stand up and apologize.
So, I would hope that perhaps they can revisit it in the future and tighten it all up and make a better package.
So my question on this was, having just taken the ethics quiz, a chunk of this is already in the ethics quiz, and we're already bound
Right.
by those rules of ethics, so I was.
But under the state ethics law, town meeting representatives are exempt from the ethics law. So you have ethics requirements as a member of the Board of Selectmen, but the 162 reps at town meeting are exempt from the.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot adopt local ethical requirements, which is what Brian Latine is attempting to do here. But the state law exempts town meeting representatives
Okay.
from the ethics provisions.
And there'd be a lot of extra steps in there where they had to compare after the vote, before the vote, and still, if someone didn't disclose it,
And who is responsible for that level of?
clerk's office.
Yeah, but how would?
But she's not the
and-
investigator.
Yeah.
She's not the
Right.
Attorney
How would
General.
the
She's
clerk know?
Right, how would you
recording.
investigate
Yeah,
that?
like how,
We'd have to get you a badge.
And some extra
star.
funding.
I mean, almost every town meeting rep should just file a disclosure before town meeting begins.
Because we pay taxes.
That's one reason, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of us, anyway. If you're renting, you don't.
Yeah, true.
We have a motion and a second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0 against?
Article 28 pertains to the 101 Mill Road property. Again, this is a citizen petition article by Brian Latina. Again, you've had the petitioners before this board recently. The Finance Committee recommended 6-0 against approval of this article.
Do we have a motion as to Article 28?
Sorry, Brian. I'll make a motion against approval of Article 28 for the town warrant.
second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Again, if this was more clear on exactly if the town was going to own this, the town was going to operate it, if that was the intent, like if I knew more background about exactly what the goal was here, I might vote differently, but I'm not sure if they want the town to own this and now run Country Inn, including meals, rooms, and so forth, so it was just too ambiguous.
Even if they did, I don't think I could vote for it.
I would
We've
probably-
got too much money invested in it
Yep.
already.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0 against?
Article 29 is an article presented by the Disabilities Commission that would amend the general bylaws to require the provision of large font menus in 16-point letter format. And Len Olenchek, the chair of the Disabilities Commission, is here waiting patiently, so I'll give Len a chance to present his case to the board. The Finance Committee recommended against approval on this by a 6-0 vote. But Len is here if I want to come up to the podium, Len, and explain to the board and the community what's being sought here.
It's not meant to be punitive in any way, but what we've had is, being the chairman of the Council on Aging and also on the Disability Commission, we've been getting a lot of banter from people saying we'd like to be able to read our own menus. We looked at Braille to begin with, so we looked at, and then from the senior or low vision people, they said that we'd like something that we can read. So we actually did our homework, talked to Annie Smith on the commission, talked to the Mass Council for Blindness, And Braille is not being used that much with seniors or low vision people. It is being used a little more with people that are younger and have problems, blind or low vision, and we can address that down the road if that's needed. But again, the seniors, which a lot of them had asked us, is right now they go in and someone has to read the menu for them. We're not talking about all menus, just 1 or 2, maybe up to 5, depending on the size of the restaurant, so that they have the freedom to read their own. The Braille also was not really required because the older you get, the tactile on the fingers is difficult to really read Braille. So that's why this particular article came up. Again, it's not a punitive, but we'd like to have a little bit of teeth behind it when we go and say, would you do a look at doing this? The cost is not very high, anywhere from $20 to $25 for a menu. So if they only have to have 2 or up to 5, it's not a very large expenditure. It may seem frivolous in some things, but it's not to the people that really require and need it. So that's why we set up this article.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you say the cost is, let's say, $25,
Right.
are you pinpointing exactly how that menu has to appear? In other words, does it have to be identical to their regular menu, or it can be simply a sheet of paper with everything listed in larger print?
However they wish to do it. I would assume that, they would want to have something that would be in a similar type. If they have they have a booklet, if you go to a multi-page, they may want to do that. But if they don't and they want it with a single page, that's okay too.
Would that satisfy your group?
Yes, it would. Again, they want the freedom to be able to read it with their own glasses or whatever. Some of them have to use a magnifying glass to read it. They just want the freedom so that they don't, because it takes a long time for somebody to read it to them, whereas opposed to them looking at it and being able to look at it and say, okay.
Is large print classified as a certain size?
Yes, we did our homework on that. We talked to optometrists, and we came up with a 16 font, suggested, which is a bold type. We also looked at the type of letter and one that's called Calibri, which is, again, is really a one they use all the time.
And am I correct that the warrant would apply to any restaurant?
Any restaurant that has a menu that they hand at the table. Most of the menus now, that if you go into a sub shop or you go into a, they're large enough on the board so that they can really read that. So that's what we're looking for.
So if they had it up on a board and it was 16 or better, that would exempt them?
Well, you'd have to look at the restaurant. I don't think Andiamo's would like to be putting up a big board.
Well, I'm saying if they already have a board.
If they have a board, then that would be fine. Again, because of the background, they have a white, usually black letters or red letters, and that's okay. They can see that. But again, when you have the small print, we've all been to a lot of restaurants, and if the print is in that font or just a little bit, it's very difficult. Again, no punitive saying, okay, we're going to fine you if you don't have it. But, we can't we don't have enough members to go out and say to restaurants, I as the ADA coordinator really can't, that's not part of that jurisdiction to say that you should have one. Again, what would happen is we'd have a placard that would say, please, if you wish to have a, large print menu, ask your server.
Is this been allowed in any other town or?
We don't know of any.
A recommendation in any other towns?
No. But there are some, I know that in the Boston area, right in Boston, there are some that do have, but it's not something that's, someone talked to them or they themselves, some of their customers or whatever. The customers have not gone directly to the restaurant and say, this is what we want. They just want to be able to look at their own menu instead of being read to.
Well, like you just said, Len, what would be the penalty?
No, we said it's not a punitive thing, but we're trying to put it
No
on the books
penalty?
to say, we don't want to get to that level, because we want to do it as, as a favorable type thing.
It would fall under the general bylaws of the community, which the zoning enforcement officer is the enforcing officer of the community.
Yeah, if it goes up
Right.
through the health department or whatever,
Generally,
venue
you'd
it
get a
goes.
warning. I mean, we're not gonna go out, we're not gonna, as I think Glenn is explaining, if somebody isn't complying, you'd get a letter or notice to the proprietor saying,
Right.
look, the town has voted to adopt a bylaw to do this, and obviously if they don't comply, then the town could seek action.
So their punitive could be that they just don't go to that restaurant after they
Exactly.
find out they don't have it.
Exactly. Because we'd like to even put in a list of people that do adopt this type of menu, to say, we certainly would have it at the senior center, a list saying, these are the places that have the large print menu. It may seem like a small, minute problem,
No, it's a big.
but it's not.
I'm part of that problem. I go to a lot of restaurants in town. I have trouble reading the menus.
And who reads yours to you?
Yeah, because between the low light and the size of the print.
Exactly.
So I agree 100% with you. Even for me, I'd appreciate, but
I, as the ADA, would probably go to most of the restaurants, because I do the assessment of, their ADA compliance anyways, and ask them nicely, say, would you do this? This is now part of the town bylaws.
But part of the side effect of your great ideas, it
Yep.
goes back to Paul, if this goes to your zoning and the building inspector
General
decides.
bylaw.
General
Yeah,
bylaw,
general bylaw.
but the building inspector decides to enforce it, could he shut a restaurant down for it?
No, you'd
No,
get
no.
you'd get a fine per day that you weren't in compliance with the bylaw.
So he could put a fine on it.
Yes.
Who would establish what the fine is?
The fine is specified in the town bylaws. The code.
So while he's looking that up, Glenn, while he's looking that up, now, what about if, you said if they have a regular menu like that, what if they have specials? Would, not to get picky or anything, would they
Well,
have
if
to
you-
have that the same way?
Well, if you notice, I would, as a restaurant owner, if there's only 4 or 5 menus or whatever number that's at that restaurant, I mean, to actually have it typed up on a computer with that font and that type of letter would suffice.
Sounds like it's just a couple of keystrokes and
It is.
it's created.
It's not a big deal. And most specials that, they're already printed out on an inkjet printer anyway. It's just, it's not a big deal.
And even if the price is changed, the same thing applies.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. I'm not against it. My only worry is that, because you're saying it's not punitive, however, it's going to get.
After a warning, what's the traditional method behind this? So they would so you would notice it and say, hey, just so you know, we've adopted this bylaw, you need a
Exactly.
few menus. And they say, okay, and they do it, there's no problem. If they don't do it, then they get a letter, and
Right,
then,
the provision, this is non-criminal disposition. The first one is a written warning for the first offense, $100 for the second offense, $200 for the third offense, $300 for the fourth and subsequent offenses. Each day in which a violation exists shall be deemed to be a separate offense.
okay,
How
so,
soon does a person have to rectify, the first offense? Is the second offense the next day, or
No, generally.
discretionary?
Generally, in a case like this, the building commissioner gives them a 14-day period to respond. And then if they fail to respond even through this with what we call the ticketing non-criminal disposition, then they can appeal that to the Lowell District Court. But generally what you get is we see a lot of these things daily in terms of zoning and other violations. You basically get a series of 4 to 5 written warnings, then you go to the penalty.
so it is punitive eventually, but at that point, it's getting to a level of ridiculousness. Like, why can't you just print out a menu in a larger font? Like, this is not.
But there is an end result in
There is,
finding.
there is
There
an
is an
end
end
result,
result,
and there is a time limit, and it seems reasonable to me. This seems like a reasonable thing, and I don't think that the punitive aspect of it is out of proportion when they have that much warning. So it's not like it's the next day, it's not like it's, I came in at 10 a.m., it's 6 p.m., like, where is it? So if they have notice.
If nothing else, we're playing on their heartstrings,
Yeah, there you go.
okay?
So,
People
And I
that,
agree with 100% what you're saying. It's a great idea. You're playing on the heartstrings. My disconnect with it is the fact that now we have someone in the town who can actually go out and start fining.
Well, I can do that too.
I agree.
I won't bring a yardstick or anything else with me, but we'll ask them nicely.
Well,
I've talked to a couple, and they've already said that wouldn't be a problem for them.
You know, I would assume that since this is new and most residents are not going to know about it, that part of it is the educational process to let them know, and they'll be easy on bringing the message first. You know, I know when I go in and I forget my glasses, I'm looking for my wife's glasses, and it happens. And as Emily said, it's a couple of keystrokes. They've got it in their word processing program. They just change the font and kick it out.
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen a week after town meeting. If this were
Right.
approved, the town clerk would submit the bylaw and vote to the Attorney General. That takes generally about 90 days. Then, once it is approved, it has to be posted for 21 days? I think it's 21 days. And then basically then becomes effective. So we
So
would
at this point, we're
provide
looking at
ample
6
time to
months
give
before
notice.
any monetary fines would happen. If you can't print out a menu in 6 months.
Believe me, I look ridiculous. I take my phone out, put it on camera, blow it up, and I'm reading my menu with my camera, so
So-
I'm on board with you, but.
Well, since it's
6 months to print out a new thing, I think it's not a big deal.
Since it's apparent the vice chair does not support this, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 29.
I second approval.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
4-1.
Thank you. The low vision people will be very happy. Thank you.
4-1 in
And
favor.
don't go anywhere, Len. The
I'm
next
not going anywhere
The
this
next one is from the Disabilities Commission as well. This has to do with handicap parking, and this is the requirement that would amend the town bylaws to require that the handicap parking spaces be painted OSHA handicap blue if such parking space is paved with concrete, bituminous concrete, or other roadway surface material, and marked with the OSHA and international symbol of accessibility. And Len's going to show you what that would look like.
Well, the reason I did that is because when I go out and look at, we have a mishmash all over town. Some just put the symbol for the wheelchair. That's it, but the state has a rule to say that we want the contrast. We want the white or yellow symbol for the wheelchair, but we also want the blue square. The reason that's done too is sometimes when there's a little bit of snow on the ground, covers just the yellow or the white, especially the white, but if the blue. And again, it is part of what
That's all that's required? There's no sign required? no?
there is a sign required. That's gonna be next year's. I didn't want to load it up with 3, because that's the law. That's the Massachusetts
that's
law,
why-
saying
so
that
you
you
have
must have both
signs,
of
yeah.
the
I mean, you can't
Sign.
legally ticket somebody, can you, if there's no sign up and they park there?
if there's this on the ground, we will.
On the ground, you can do that?
I'm allowed, thanks to the chief, I'm able to issue tickets for handicap that don't have the placards or parking in the incorrect. And that money goes to us, and then we
Bless
issue
you.
we give a little bit of money to I'm trying to think of the exact word to use.
Commission on Disabilities, I mean?
No, we give it to Nashoba and some scholarships for handicapped children, individuals at Chelmsford High School and also Nashoba.
So this is a cost to the town and to the businesses in the town if they own a parking lot.
Right. And it isn't, if it passed, it wouldn't be a case that everybody must go out and do it immediately. Some of them that have to redo theirs, usually in the springtime, every year and a half. The fact that we said it was that particular blue, it's also, you buy the cans of safety blue as well, that's the same color. Same, if you use the yellow, it's safety yellow. And you can buy that at Home Depot and things. But, because there are some small places that can have 1 or 2, they have to have 1 space anyways, but they can do their own. I do a lot of woodworking, so I've also made a stencil and also the square. And if anybody would like that, a single, I will lend that to them, and then they can use the spray paint to do it. So it saves them
Very nice.
some money.
So it is a specific size that it has to be?
Not really.
Oh.
No. Of course, the width of the, the parking space, but it's, as long as it's decent sized. It's not, I just printed this just to show you, I could have put some lines that show, some put bigger and larger. The one I made was a little bit larger for them if they were going to use it. Again, that's because it is the law.
So it does or doesn't have to be maybe 8 by 16 or 8 by 8?
No.
Just uniform?
Just uniform, right, a square. If you want to use a rectangle, that's fine too, but just something that's conforms with the state laws. And also, I must say, the rest of the nation.
Finance Committee recommended 6-0.
Do we have a motion as to the recommendation of Article 30?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of Article 30 for the town
Second.
warrant.
We have a motion
Very
and a
much.
second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you. And the final article is street acceptances, Article 31. Steve Yonley was in at your previous meeting, and this would be to accept the following roadways as public ways in the town of Chelmsford: Elm Street, Hunt Road, Lock Road, Parker Road, and Robin Hill Road. And again, there's no monetary expenditure for the town for these. This would be submitted to the state, and the idea being is that the town would continue to be responsible for the maintenance of these roadways, but we would actually get credit for this in our Chapter 90 gasoline tax reimbursement to the community. Finance Committee recommended 6-0.
Do we have a motion as to the recommendation on Article 31?
I will make a motion to recommend approval of Article 31 of the town warrant.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
And speaking of that, the next item is Steve Yonley coming in on the street acceptances.
Hi, good evening. As you know, this will be the third of the 4 steps, basically to accept these streets. I think in your packet was kind of the signature page for the 6 streets. And again, it's just the next step in the process, with the final step being approval at town meeting.
And the planning board did accept
Yes,
yeah,
I'm
did accept
sorry, yeah.
these, yeah.
On, the planning board met March 28th and did vote to recommend unanimously acceptance of these streets. And again, this is just it's a housekeeping matter more than anything, because these roads have been roads in town for years.
So are they looking for a motion?
Yeah, the motion would be to accept the order, to enact the order of layout for each of those following 6 roadways.
All right.
As presented.
Do we have a motion?
Should I do it separate?
No, I think you can do them all. Oh, you might want to do one separate, because I think one of the members is going to abstain, yeah.
Right. So I'll make a motion to approve the layout of Park Road, Robin Hill Road, Hunt Road, Parker Road, and Lock Road.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll make a motion to accept the layout of Elm Street.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'm abstaining.
And one abstain.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. We have some town manager bid awards?
Yeah, I have one bid award for your approval this evening. I'm seeking the board's confirmation of the bid award for the Harrington School bathroom renovation project in the amount of $286,784 to Builder Systems, Inc. For the reconstruction of the bathrooms at the Harrington School. And as noted in the correspondence from the project engineer, this is the same company that performed satisfactorily the work at the high school and the Parker Middle School project.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to award the bid for the Harrington Elementary School toilet rooms renovation project to Builder Systems, Inc. in the amount of is it the 286,784?
28674 base bid, yeah.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
We have some town manager reports tonight.
Yeah, the first item on the report, and this is going to take a little bit of time, this, as the board may recall, at your last meeting, I presented to you the then recently issued arbitration award from the Massachusetts Joint Labor Management Committee pertaining to the labor resolution between the town of Chelmsford and the International Association of Firefighters Local 1839, or the Chelmsford Firefighters, as they're more commonly known. The summary of the award is found on page 40 of the decision, and again, the entire document is available online. But in essence, the panel came down and issued an award, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Mike McCall, my assistant, who's going to sort of explain the Joint Labor Management Committee process in terms of, the separate provisions that are in state law for police and fire contract impasse, and also sort of go over the award. And then Gary Ryan, our fire chief, is here, and he will discuss how this award will be implemented if approved by town meeting. So I'll turn it over to Mike at this point.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have slides up here. They may be hard to read, so I have handouts as well that'll blow them up. So just those of you who are new and those of you who are at home, most people refer to the Joint Labor Management Council as the JLMC. It's special with regard to collective bargaining, as they become involved when there's an exhaustion of the collective bargaining process between police or firefighter bargaining units. So the JLMC was first enacted in 1977. They got involved with mediation, and then under the Acts of '87, they were empowered with arbitration. Typically what happens when a municipality wants to sit down with the unions to work out the contracts, you have standard negotiations. So using the flow chart that I have up there, you start at the top. You start in your regular collective bargaining process with your negotiations. If you're able to reach an agreement at that point, you would exit to the right, you'd have a contract. If not, you would continue through the negotiation process. If you reach an impasse, at that point, either the police, the fire, or the municipality could petition the JLMC for mediation. The JLMC is a 12-member committee. There's 6 management members. There's 3 police and 3 fire. They also have staff investigators and mediators. At this point in the process, after the petition is made, the committee will send out a staff member to assist with the mediation and investigate the issues. At that point, they'll be working with that staff member on mediation to try and resolve the matter. Again, if there's an agreement, you can reach the contract. If not, you continue through that process until the parties realize that, again, they can't move forward, and at that point, they would petition the committee for committee-level mediation. So in addition to the staff at that point, members from each side of the committee are assisting in the process. So you have management members as well as a corresponding either fire member of the panel or police. I am an alternate on that committee. There are 6 members, most notably Andrew Flanagan, who's the town manager in Andover, and John Petrin, who's the town administrator in Burlington. Because they are from our region, they tend to assist in our mediation and arbitration. Andrew Flanagan was involved in this current matter. So once the committee takes it, they're involved, they get updates, they have meetings twice a month. I attend those, they discuss the progress of the various collective bargaining issues on their list of items that they've taken jurisdiction of. At some point, if the parties feel that they cannot make any progress, they can petition for a hearing before the committee. It's called a 3A hearing. They can either have a full hearing, or they could waive that process if they realize that there's no meeting of the minds. At that point, they have to certify the issues on both sides. Each side is allowed to have up to 5 issues to carry forward. Once you go past the 3A hearing, if the panel decides that the collective bargaining process has been exhausted, they can recommend interest arbitration. again, we went through all these steps to get where we are right now with the fire department. So once we go into interest arbitration, there's a full adjudicatory hearing. Each side's represented by counsel. Witnesses are called. There's a 3-member panel which consists of a neutral arbitrator and 1 member from the management team and 1 member from the appropriate labor side. After the arbitrator and the panel hears all the information, they make a determination and they may make an award. In our case, they made an award. So you get to the end where it says contract, yes or no. If an award is not made and not funded, it goes all the way back to the beginning of the process. Right now, we have an award before us, and the statute indicates that neither the municipality or the labor side can disparage that award. And it's not enough not to say anything bad about the award, but you can't be silent. So you have to present the award in a favorable light back to the community. So with that, I'll give you an overview of the award that was presented in this case by the 3-member panel. We wound up with a 3-year agreement, which will result in 2 increases for the salary going back to July 1st of 2016 through July 1st of 2018. With regard to the education incentive, there was a 1% increase on the EMT stipend, bringing it from 6% up to 7%, effective July 1st, 2016. There was also an award that for 1 apparatus at one of the stations shall be manned with 3 firefighters when responding to any call at all times. There was also an award that employees may be required to perform light duty while on leave due to injury, or illness, or disability. These all came out of the certified issues from both sides. The panel did not award these issues. The union had asked for a night differential. They're on a 24-hour shift. They wanted a salary differential for the evening shifts. They had also asked for additional stipends for some of the professional certifications that they can get, not the required ones, but there's additional ones that they can obtain to be more proficient in their areas of expertise. The town also sought to eliminate additional vacation leave on certain anniversaries, work anniversaries. And the town also sought to eliminate the accrual of vacation while employees were out on leave for being injured on duty after 2 weeks. So those 4 issues were not awarded by the panel. Going forward to fund these, the cost for funding the award in fiscal year 2017 for the retroactive pay for the salary is $71,000. The increase in the EMT stipend was $37,000 for a total of $109,841.65. In fiscal year 18, there's accrued monies as well as the balance of the fiscal year, the total being $162,782.12 for salary. The EMT stipend increases to $44,861.51, and there's an estimated OT overtime for a total of $247,643.63. Going forward for fiscal year 19, the projection is for salary for $374,378, and the increase in the EMT is $49,994. Remember that each year this is being compounded. In the first year, in fiscal year 2017, this is 2%, and the 1% in the EMT, and each year that compounds as we go forward. So the total award, looking at the 2 years for the retro and the actual, as well as fiscal 19, the total is $781,857.28. Any questions?
So what that means in terms of is, as I mentioned earlier in the budget presentation, our bylaw prohibits us from funding contracts prospectively. So the funding source of this at town meeting is going to be 2 sources. One is going to be the appropriation for the new fiscal year, the $424,372. That will come from next year's tax levy. So that will be voted, it'll be accrued as of July 1, we'll be operating, and then, you know, when you set the tax rate in November, that will be included as the appropriation from the year. The monies for 17 and 18, the balance of that will be funded from the town's available reserves, stabilization fund, and so forth. And that was why, if you recall, in previous years, we put money in because we knew we were going through fiscal years and we'd have to pay this bill. So that's the request and impact. And what's outstanding at this point is we still do not have agreements with the two police unions. The last we heard, we're hoping to set dates for the arbitration hearing with the police and so the union. So it does not appear that that will be ready for this town meeting. The question becomes, well, what's the financial impact and how does this affect your budget going forward? Because you now have the award, and so you'll have $424,372 voted in the FY19 budget, and then back in Article 6. In Article 6 is the operating budget going forward without the contract impact. That combined amount, will be available to the fire chief, Gary Ryan, to operate the department in fiscal year 2019. Now, the question becomes, there is a provision in this agreement in terms of the ability that we're required to operate the station in which there are 3 firefighters has to be on duty in one station at all times. The current staffing model, and I'll ask Gary to speak to this, we went down to a case where there were 2 firefighters in all stations at all times. And I'll ask Gary to come up and speak in terms of the frequency of that, and then what the economic dynamics impacts of that going to be, and then how he would operate the department with the budget, with the funding award under the agreement, and also the recommended budget under the operating budget of the community. Gary?
Good evening, thank you. So with this award, the fire chief has to assign an additional firefighter at one of the stations, one of the pieces of apparatus. So it is my intention at this time to assign the third. Let me just kind of go back. In the center station, if all the firefighters are in, we have a captain and up to 5 firefighters. Engine 2 up north, 3 in west, 4 in east, and engine 5 at south only have 2 firefighters. So this award stipulates that I must assign a third firefighter on one piece of apparatus. Initially, I was going to assign that firefighter to the center station. However, anybody who's been in the center station, our rescue holds only 2 firefighters. Only 2 members can be on that truck. So it is my intention probably to assign that third firefighter up north to engine 2. So as far as the financial impact, if you take a look at the fiscal 17 numbers, how many times, and this is the analysis I had to do, how many times we had 2 firefighters in the center station, firefighters out on vacation, sick, personal days, or injuries. 261 times we ran down to 2 firefighters. So funding this with the overtime rate, the new top rate for overtime is $41. And my numbers have been checked by Darlene and John Souza. We're looking at a $200,000 overtime expenditure. So unless that's funded, it's my intention to close one of the stations and reassign the firefighters. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So you said there was 261 times you were short.
60% of the time, he does not have the ability to.
Right,
So is
261 times in the center station next
Shifts,
door.
261 shifts.
Out of 365
Out of
days.
365,
Oh,
correct.
so 261 days out of
Correct.
365. Okay.
Right, 60% of the time, we do not
Right,
have.
we run down to 2, yes.
So, you're looking at overtime to pay for this. Would it make more fiscal sense to hire another firefighter?
Then I would have to, and town manager can jump in, I would have to hire at least 4 minimum to cover the 4 shifts, the 4 groups. There are 4 units that we have.
Okay, and what would the salary on that be? A ballpark?
Ballpark, they start off at 40,000, but then you wouldn't initially have them to start because they have to go to the academy.
Plus you have benefit,
Plus
benefit
the
costs as
benefits,
well.
obviously, we look
So
at that.
You're probably talking at least $60,000 per firefighter.
Okay.
Times 4, so it's $250,000 right there.
Okay.
So if you were to close the station, would you be reducing your total employees, or are we just reassigning
A
them?
reassignment.
No one would be losing their job.
Oh, no, absolutely not. No.
What would it, you have any expectation of what that would do with the response rate?
Well, we both had an
South Chelmsford? I think
It
that's what
would,
you-
well, certainly my opinion would increase it. And those
Any
are,
idea on what kind of times involved?
I did some analysis, I'd be happy to show it to you. Let me- Okay. Oops. Quick approach. There you go. So what you're looking at there is an analysis of response times. It takes addresses from certain parts of the town that I was looking to close, whether it's Engine 5, which is Slade Road. You got a couple addresses for Engine 3's territory, Sarah Drive, and you have 40 Manning Road, which is Engine 4. So the analysis I did with, you brought up about 10 pages there, what you have to look at is if that station is closed, say if it's Engine 5, what is the next closest station that can respond? Say if it's Engine 1. But you also have to look at if Engine 1 is tied up on a call, a medical, they're out on 495, you have to look at the next closest station. That's why I did for each address there, the analysis, it'll break down the response per engine. So if I close, say, Engine 4, and when they have a medical at 40 Manning Road, you've got to assume if Engine 4 is closed, the next closest station is Engine 1, and it's probably a 7-minute response time. It will show you. If Engine 1 is on the highway, the next closest engine company is Engine 2. So for each address, I did it by each station. So you have a look at how long it's going to take. I also did it by time. I did it 7 in the morning. I also did it 5 o'clock at night. So you have a disparity of how long it would take, you know, in the morning, if we have response in the morning, as opposed to in the afternoon.
What,
And this analysis, by the way, uses Google Maps and uses Waze technology, so it updates the traffic. So-
Is there any data in terms of what percentage of calls are life-saving versus anything else that they might be doing?
I do have the break, as far as medicals,
Yeah,
I mean,
because,
that's what we're
life
looking
is
at.
in
Most of the
danger.
calls are medical, correct.
Right.
So I did a breakdown for that, if you'd like to see it. So this is broken down. Sorry, sure. It's broken down to the months, the calls, and the calls. So you're looking at, I know it's small font, we were just talking about that earlier, but you're looking at medicals. I need a 16 font right here. Line item 12. But that's per station. Each station has its, I did analysis on all the calls, all the breakdowns per month. So you
it
can
looks like
tell.
those are, that's the largest category,
Exactly. The medical calls are the largest category, correct.
overwhelmingly.
Exactly. So the breakdown is for per engine company for the calendar year of 2017. So by going through that, you will see just total volume, just in terms of volume of calls, Engine 5 has the lowest amount, which is kind of what the analysis we did back in 2008 when Chief Parrow closed the station.
So the station has been closed in the past?
It was closed
So
in
how many- how long a
2008.
period of time?
About 2 fiscal years, I think we had it closed.
2008 to, we opened it in
Rotated.
2011.
2011, into 3 fiscal
They
years.
they rotated the
South Chelmsford.
closed station.
Then they rotated.
And then
So Chelmsford was-
Chelmsford was closed permanently,
Yes.
right.
Engine 5 was closed permanently for 3
Right.
years.
Right, and
When was the last time that you closed, you were alternating? When you were
That was
alternating
before,
West
that was
Chelmsford?
before 2008. 2008 with the fiscal downturn, Chief Parrow
Was that
closed.
between west and east or something?
Exactly, yeah. West would be closed on even days. I'm sorry, west would be closed on odd days. Engine 4, east would be closed on even days.
That wasn't that recent, though, you're saying. I thought it was more recent.
No, no, we've had stations open since 2011,
All of them.
all of them.
5.
This seems to kind of pit one part of Chelmsford versus another ultimately. What has the reaction been in the past when things like this have been done?
people are not happy when a fire station closes. We know that.
It
We-
raises your,
when we-
your fire
Right,
insurance.
when we did the fire station analysis just over a decade ago, we looked at the station configuration. In fact, we had a committee that was formed, which a majority of the committee had some fire department affiliation, whether it was Bill Dalton, who was a selectman at the time, had been on the committee, Hank Hool, John Kivlin, and so forth, and the chief at the time. And we looked at this, and because we were looking to replace the center station. We looked at various station configuration models from 3 stations in town to 5 stations, and so there was a 4-station configuration. We ended up staying with the 5-station model because 2 reasons. One was response time, and the second one was cost considerations. If we were to go to a 4-station model, we would have had to build 2 new fire stations. And it was challenging enough to get the funding for 1 fire station. And in that 4-station configuration, we looked at it, it would have been, you would have built the new fire station adjacent to the police station up by where the tennis courts were, and then you would have merged the center and the east station and probably built a new station up near the cemetery.
Engine 4, I think, would have been relocated
Would
a
have been
little closer
relocated
down
closer-
Barica Road, yeah.
Right, down Barica Road near where the cemetery is. It just was deemed too costly to response. And so the result was the community decided to build the station adjacent to the town offices here. And the model was to keep the 5 stations open so that you could have a quick response time to get from the 5 stations to get somebody on the scene to do the assessment, and then you have the other crew coming in behind them. And that's where it's existed prior to the closings and up till today. The argument at the JLMC that Mike described was, for firefighter safety at a fire scene, it is certainly, your desired configuration, your safe configuration is 2 in, 2 out, 4 on an apparatus. 2 people show up and stay with the engine, and 2 people go in. It's 4, 2 in, 2 out. I think with the arbitrator, the decision was with the 3 on the apparatus, and then you have a captain show up, that would have been your 4th person. You'd have your 2 in, 2 out. And so we think that's the basis of the decision by, and clearly, and I was quoted, you've seen press releases about it, and the chief agrees. Clearly, that is a safer fire response, and in fact, the chief can attest, in previous years' budgets, including this year, we would like to add additional firefighters, much like we like to add additional police officers and highway workers and so forth. The problem is the funding constraint. When we assembled the budget, again, we put money aside for the previous year's work. We assumed that every other union in the community, from the teachers to the highway to everybody else, had a 2% settlement. So we incorporated that into our budget building process. What's happening here is that you've got the 2 and 2 as you speak of. We're also having to absorb that 1% in the EMT thing. But to fully fund this, as the chief described, if you needed to now fund an additional $200,000 in overtime, that's not baked into the budget, reflecting the fact that we still have to settle the 2 police unions. And then, so you end up going from what would have been a compounded 2 and 2 to what essentially becomes a 10% award. And so that's the delta, that's the shortfall we have as a community. And I think clearly in a perfect world, we would like to keep all 5 stations open and staff it. We just don't have the financial means within the tax levy and the town's operating budget to sustainably fund this going forward. And so that's why we've asked the chief to explain that, given the recommended funding for the award, which we support, and the recommended budget that's in the operating budget of the town, that's what will leave us. The only way he can maintain the department, he believes, and meet the requirements under the contract, as supported by the town, and hopefully supported by town meeting, would be to do a station closure.
Gary, if you do that and you put 3 people in our Chelmsford, and you get a medical call in our Chelmsford, you're gonna send the 3 people out on the medical call?
They would have to comply with the award, they would have to, yes.
I have so many questions. I'm trying to sort them in a logical way, so I'm sorry if there's a better way to go.
While you're
So,
just, Gary, there's like 30 pages here of data.
I have a question.
How do we even digest this now?
Are you expecting?
Well, we're not asking you an award, we're not asking for a decision this evening, we're trying to explain.
I'm trying to give you some of the data.
We get this,
I'd be happy to give it
copies
to
for
you.
everybody, so we
I
can.
wish we
Absolutely.
had it in our packet, so we'd had a little.
Right, and that's fine, I just want you to know that, I'd be happy to forward that to you.
so, if you are short 60% of the time and you are looking at 200,000 in overtime, how is exhaustion for your current firefighters going to factor into this?
When you say short, we staff down to 2 in the center station.
Yes.
So, that's what we run down to, and that's what we run down to the outline station as far as.
I'm just concerned that if people are working overtime, if you're working 200,000 of overtime, or you estimated 250K to hire and fully cover another 4 positions.
Right.
No, it's one position. You have to hire 4 people
Yeah,
to
there's
cover
4 units
one
you gotta cover
person.
for. There's 4
That doesn't
operating
assume,
units.
that doesn't assume if you hire those 4 people, you're not gonna have an overtime problem. That just gives you 1 extra person per shift.
And to be clear, with that $200,000, that was for fiscal, 17. Going forward,
It's going to be more.
I have 16 people who get an extra week of vacation next year.
Okay.
So, I mean, that figure was, again, let's be clear, it was based on fiscal 17.
I'm just wondering how, so if you have all of this overtime going in, I'm wondering how firefighter exhaustion will factor in when they're working.
That was settled on the last. There is a clause in the prior agreement to limit the amount of hours they can work.
Okay.
So there is a clause for safety that they can only work so many hours.
Okay, and I was also wondering, so if we closed down a station or ended up building new ones, which just sounds impossible to get through, what would the house fire insurance for that area be?
We would probably find out soon because we go through ISO probably next year. It's a 3-year process.
I would be interested in putting that out there. I want to know, but I think that if you look at the cost savings, and I live around the corner from the North Chelmsford firefighters, so, but I think that the cost savings, I'd be interested to see what the difference is in your fire insurance for an area of having that staffed fire station.
Right, we could probably take a look at the ISO from back in 2008 and
Yes,
compare it
so
to what we have.
That would be great.
I don't know if they'll give me the financial breakdown because it only gives me a grading, but I can certainly ask.
So then my other question is, we use, is it Trinity for our ambulances?
Correct.
Okay. What is the cost of that versus owning an ambulance and billing for the ambulance trips?
We've been through, 3 studies looking at this? So, I mean, I leave it to the town manager, but we've had 3 studies to look at bringing in a fire department-based ambulance, and the last one, I believe, was 2008?
2008.
2008, and it was not approved by the Board of Selectmen.
What was going to be the net result of it as you envisioned it?
But the fire department-based ambulance?
Yes.
Well, certainly back then, when Chief Parrow was presented, it would bring in funds to staff up the center fire station.
But net?
I don't have the number.
Yeah.
$229,000 a year.
Thank you.
A cost or saving?
That was the debate. You remember they formed a special commission, and the commission came back and recommended against that, because.
It was chaired by John Tebow. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
But what does that mean, Sam? 229,000 net?
That means net, after all expenses are paid.
So it was going to bring in 229?
$229,000.
That is Mr. Chase's opinion.
No, it's not.
I-
That's what the report said.
I think we'd
So-
have to look at the report.
Well, so that was 10 years ago. So, but 229,000, we've got a 200,000 overtime bill to pay. And that was 10 years ago.
Would you like to step to the podium?
No, read the report.
I will go look it up. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure that somebody has a copy.
I'm sure it's out there. And I'm sure somebody is emailing it to me right now. I bet you when I go home,
Probably not.
it's somewhere behind door number 3 here. Yeah, okay, so.
Is this more of a, as far as eliminated, in terms of a long-term solution, is this more of a knee-jerk to close the South Station as opposed to a long-term solution going forward, anticipating this cost going forward year after year after year?
This would be an ongoing situation because you have, as Mike said, we cannot speak against the arbitration award. But the concern is that even with the 3-station staffing, it does not meet the fire safety requests of 4 people on every apparatus that goes out at every station at every time. And therefore, Glenn, if you look this forward, where does this ultimately go? As noted in the bargaining process, the request was for 4 firefighters per apparatus at all times. So again, I've got to be careful because we can't just speak against the award under the provisions of the governing legislation. But the answer to your question is, as best as we can understand, this is a perpetual situation where the town has two choices. Right now, we've operated with 4 stations with 2 people
Right,
in the center, or you could go 2 stations with 4 people.
okay.
But the
And that
problem
would
with the 2
increase
stations
times
with
to
4
16
people is it
minutes,
increases your response
And in 16
time.
minutes, you have, you
Exactly.
know, someone dead from a heart attack, you have a house burned to the ground.
But, right, but, and the problem is we're an anomaly. If you go to most communities, they do not have 5 fire stations. We do not know of, if you go to Tewksbury, Billerica, and so forth.
If you go to North Andover, they got 2. You go to Andover, probably the same, and I got that in front of here.
So would you, in your professional
Westford
opinion,
has 2 and it's the
and
second largest town on the.
Andover has
It's the way
31
the
square
highways-
miles, and they got 3 stations. Westford has 32 square miles, 3 stations. North Andover has 26 square miles, 2 stations. Wilmington, smaller in size, 17 square miles, 1 station.
and what's the square mileage of Chelmsford?
22 and a half.
Okay, and then, so I think sometimes where you have a community like Chelmsford that is bisected by a major highway, that adds so much time.
Response time, correct.
So I think that's part of the problem, is that unless it's configured ideally, you are going to lose a ton of time trying to get around the highways that we have going through the town. So I'm sorry, I'm just.
No, it depends on where you start.
I've just
Right.
gotten a
Right.
pile of information, so I'm trying to process. I'm so sorry. So I'm. Is it out of place to suggest that we look again at a contract ambulance that could potentially
That's
pay
not
the
gonna,
over?
you can't do that overnight.
No,
But we're
no,
trying,
oh,
but
I
we've
know,
got to
I know.
deal
I'm
with
just saying that in
3 weeks
terms of
from
a
now.
long-term
Right.
view of this, if we are coming
If the
up
Board of
with
Selectmen would like to form an
$250,000
ambulance committee, then the board should
But
choose to do that.
if we're coming
I've
up-
been there, done that, and I'd welcome to support any such initiative, but I think it would be most appropriate if the Board of Selectmen were to take that action.
Okay, 'cause
Because given the history of this issue, much
sounds
like the other.
contentious,
No, it's
and-
not, it's not contentious. The point is, this, like other issues in the community, have a history. And I think the most viable way to study this issue going forward would be the vote come from the Board of Selectmen to form such a committee, because in the past, the opposition was from the Board of Selectmen, which is what the chief and I are saying. That's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying don't do it, do it. All I'm saying is that if the board wishes to undertake an reanalysis
I hear
again,
you.
then that should come from the Board of
I
Selectmen.
hear you, and so I'm just saying that as a long-term solution, if you were telling me that an ambulance brings in $250,000 and we're short $250,000, doesn't that seem to balance it out? I'm just looking for other funding, I'm looking for other revenue streams, and I'm looking to solve a long-term problem. Because what I don't want to see is coming back with $200K of overtime a year with short-staffed firefighters, short-staffed fire engines, and 16-minute response times for heart attacks and house burnings. I have a neighbor who had a house fire.
But if you staff the ambulance, you still don't have the 3-4 people in the stations. You still have the problem with this.
Yes.
Even if you fund an ambulance,
No, I
you still have
understand
the, you still
that
have
we
the
need
safety
an
problem.
extra apparent $4 million to staff all of this.
Right.
I understand that, but if we could improve the situation, it seems to me that we are once again in a ditch where we are looking for a short-term solution, and I'm wondering what the long-term solution is. And I think that I would like to see information on what the insurance, the fire insurance on houses for an area would be, and what the effect of having our town bisected by highways is as well. And because we also respond to 495 calls. within
495
our-
Route 3, Low Connector,
Route
yes.
3. So it seems that we might have more fire stations, but it also sounds at first blush that we might have more responsibilities as well. Is that,
Responsibilities as far as the call volume, or?
just in terms of, yeah, and in
I mean,
terms of.
you see us quite a bit on the highways. Obviously, Route 3, 495, we got quite a lot of calls out there.
Jared, do you have Burlington's numbers there?
Was that
Do you have Burlington's numbers, square footage, and how many fire stations?
Burlington?
Square-
No. I got 1, 2.
Because that would be a good one to look at, or Marlboro.
Well, I got 11 communities. I try to get comparable communities, like Tewksbury, 21 square miles, a little lower than what we have, 3. The only one on here that has 5 is Billerica. Brecken's got 26 square miles, 5 stations. But if you look, they just went through a fire department study, they're not looking to contract, they're looking to possibly add a station for response times.
Okay.
So, I don't want to see another chart tonight, but.
Come on, I got more. I got plenty for you. I've got a cemetery.
Do you have any general statistical information concerning the response times with Chelmsford 5 stations as it relates to our neighboring towns? How we do?
The response that are with 5, yes,
Yes.
we obviously, we do better.
We do better.
We have done better. And we had the opportunity to present that at arbitration.
Okay.
But again, that's with 5 station as opposed to, say, our neighbor Westford with 3.
When you
And
say
when
done
you-
better, though, is it like half the response time? Is it 9 minutes versus
I'd say a couple
18?
minutes. It seems to be a couple minutes.
So when you, let's say that you eliminate the South Station, you're going to extend the time for the South Station. But
Correct.
those numbers will fold into the town's overall response rate.
Yes.
So it's not going to affect it very much, I would assume. Just 1 out of 5 being changed up slightly.
Well, it will have a response, I mean, because you.
It will
if
have
you
some
clo-
effect, but.
Well, it will, because you're closing engine 5, and then you're also looking at, say, engine 1 is a very busy station. If they're tied up at a medical call, then you're looking at the next closest station, which is engine 3 to respond. That's why I know you don't want to see all that analysis, but I have to look at it that way. I have to look at if the station's closed and the next closest station is closed, I mean,
Busy.
not available, that who's coming next? So if engine 4 is closed, engine 1 can't make it because they're tied up on the highway, engine 2 is coming down Route 3 to respond to, we'll call it engine 4's neighborhood.
So,
Those are things I have to look at.
Paul, was it correct to look at it as, we're going to fund this extra right now? And then looking at the possibility of closing the station?
No, I am not recommending funding the extra $200,000. I do not have that funding available, sustainable going forward.
So we need to
So
either make
in order
it
to fund that,
sustainable?
you'd have to make $200,000 and cut somewhere else, and then we also don't know the award for the police that are coming in behind it.
Or come up with new revenue.
But he's talking immediately, though.
I'm talking immediately.
Yeah, so immediately, clearly, we have yet another crisis on our hands, and then we are also looking at a very long-term, ongoing crisis. So we need some long-term plans.
But you also got to understand what your long-term goal is. Because if
Yes.
if the long-term goal is to have 4 people on an apparatus, you've got to figure out how you're going to get there.
Right, which is a whole lot more. I mean, at the bare minimum, it sounds like we need an extra $250,000 a year.
Well, that's just to do the third person on one
one-
station.
on one station.
You still have 4 other stations.
And you still have
and
4
you still
other
have- and you
stations.
still
And
have-
again,
It's only
it's
for 3
fiscal
people.
17's number, so
That's not
I
4
don't want to be
people on
held,
each
that's.
piece.
Right, that's only
I'm
3.
not going to hold you to that.
No,
No,
I'm
I
just saying, but
understand.
that's
I
just so
understand.
that
No,
we're-
I just want to,
okay.
for the
That only
record, I
gets-
understand that
That only
this-
gets you 3
this is
people on
what's-
every engine. Now you got to
So-
go back and add 5 more.
So
Okay,
how many
yeah.
towns do this for? Do the most towns do it, make it 4 on a vehicle?
Well, if you have fewer stations, we could do
Yeah, a
it.
lot of them have a 3, or like Tewksbury, they have 3. Billerica will run down to 2, but generally they have 3. But with the 3 stations, usually they have 3 firefighters on them.
So
'Cause it's
then
a
do we also have
three-station-
less vehicles?
No, we got plenty of vehicles.
No, if we,
don't
what are
know.
you saying?
You would have
Would you
fewer
have
vehicles going forward, yes.
Yeah.
If you
I mean,
close a
you have to
station,
make a decision on how you want to go forward. I mean, if you want to be Westford and go with 3 stations, obviously it's less engines, but your response times are going to go up.
But the problem is if you go to reconfigure the stations, the capital investment that's needed to reconfigure the station configurations, it
Could
would take
be
generations to make up.
astronomical, right,
We're
so-
talking millions of dollars to build.
How much was this one? Was that 8?
That was 8 million,
That
right.
was 8 million?
Yeah.
Okay,
2014.
so, okay, yes.
It should have been
So-
14. But if you see what Westford's
Right.
building right now,
Exactly.
it's 14 million.
But this
Okay.
is our main
So
station.
that's a main station. So a
Right.
satellite station,
Might still be 8 million just for,
yeah, use numbers.
because we
yeah.
don't have a study
Right.
in front of us, yes.
Right.
I don't
Time-
have all the facts,
probably
but, so
times 2.
just for argument's sake, if it would cost 8 million to
Times 2.
rebuild North Station and 8 million to rebuild whatever other
Right, so you're
optimally
six-
situated
so you're
one.
16 million to do the
And
3-station
don't we
configuration.
have fire trucks that are coming up on their end of life anyway?
Yes.
So we've got, how many are those? And those are 650.
We're hitting a cycle when they hit the 15-year mark, when we're looking for replacement in 22, 2023, 2024. And I
So-
presented at the capital meeting, so we're looking at some very expensive
Those
capital expenditures
Yeah,
going up.
650, I think, was the one we most recently replaced. If
Again,
my-
that was
if-
that was back in 2015.
Yes,
So it goes up.
And it
about
goes up.
4% each
So now
year.
we're looking at $750,000 to $1 million coming up in the next couple of years.
Mhm.
So is the cheaper, so again, long-term, is it cheaper to maintain our 5 and figure out how to at least fund this bare minimum of the extra third at one station? And can we do that through looking once again at apparently yet another third rail issue of an ambulance? Or, if it's bringing in, if it was $250,000 that it was going to bring in 2008, could it help pay for the other engines that need replacing? I don't know. So I actually would like to look at this.
John, could I ask you a question? If we were to spend $8 million on a new fire station, what would we be paying over X amount of years to do that? Your guess, just a best guess.
Right. I mean, it would depend on how many years you're going out.
What would be just in your?
Would it
Yeah.
a 20-year mortgage or whatever?
Be
20-year
20-year, if you did a
bond?
20-year bond, I'd have to look at it, but I know that the station next door, I mean, I think you're talking at least 600, 700,000 a year. I'd have to look at it in detail. Interest rates have gone up certainly since we constructed the station next door to this building, and there's some other factors, but I could do some scenarios based on rough numbers.
I have a question. Could we,
That's just the station. You also have to have the land to put it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's assumed, because, and yeah, there might be some surplus return from a station that's sold, an existing station, but we'd also have to have the asset to put it on. We're talking building costs, not land cost.
Could
So you have to find out where to put them as
I
well.
mean, could you build in the parking lot and then tear down the station to make a parking lot? You know, like, could you? I mean, it's
Yeah,
what
you'd have
schools
to-
do.
you'd have
They
to
build in
right,
the
but
fields and then.
You'd have to find the place to build it,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, right. So it sounds like that would be. I don't know. I'd like to see some numbers and see some projections.
So would
but-
I?
It's a long-term issue.
It is. It's a very long-term issue.
Would it be preliminary to put this as an agenda item at a future
Yes.
meeting?
I would
I think
think,
so.
I would like that, because we have not had a chance to look at any of this
Oh,
stuff.
we're not
even-
looking for any votes this
Well, I
evening.
understand, but still, you're looking for a discussion, and I
We're
don't
having
even
a
know.
discussion. We're presenting you with
Well,
information. We're not
okay,
asking for a vote
but you
or
know what?
opinions.
I can't look at this stuff and
I'm
have
not
a,
asking you to do anything this evening.
Oh,
We're-
thank
we-
you
we're
very
provi-
much.
We're providing you with information.
right, and you're
We
providing
know-
it
we
right
know-
now.
And we know that in 3 weeks, you'll have to make a recommendation to town meeting. That's why we're here this evening.
Right.
Well,
We're not
I wish
asking-
we
we're not
had this
asking
to
you
look at.
Exactly. But you can imagine, this has been an undertaking to get this information assembled.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so we would have liked to have had it all done and packaged, but even this
No.
issue that you raised this evening, we didn't foresee.
Okay.
And just if I could be clear, and I understand you wanted the report, I would too, but we just got the award last week.
Right.
I just got back from the National Fire Academy to compile the information that you have this week.
Well, then,
So I'd be
then
more than
maybe we
happy
should-
to get it to you. I'd be more than happy if somebody wants to come.
Then maybe
and
we
talk to
should
me.
have waited till our next
But then
meeting
if we
to
wait
have
till
this
the next meeting,
discussion.
Pat, then you say, well, we just have this information, we got to make a decision to town meeting in a week.
I-
We thought
I-
it'd be better to bring what we have rather than to bring nothing.
No, and I understand that, and I don't fault that at all. It's just, it seems, so, I mean, in terms of my own, chicken scratch here, I'm just trying to put it together. So I would, how do we make a motion to put this on a future meeting and discuss it more in depth?
Chairman can just do that.
Yeah, we need a motion, this goes on the agenda.
Right. So when do you think you can provide all that information? When will you get it out?
So
You feel
need it.
comfortable with it? Is it available immediately?
Yep.
All right. So I would propose that we would put it on our next meeting to discuss it as an agenda item.
Second?
It's not a votable.
What do we
It doesn't
do?
need to be voted.
We're just putting it as an
I
agenda
don't have
item.
Robert's rules down
Is there
pat
any other
yet, so,
question, is there any other questions or information that we can provide for you this evening in terms of, or that you want us to go retrieve. I mean, obviously, we will resurrect the last ambulance study report. We'll get
Thank
that
you.
out to the 5 of you. Gary will get you information in terms of the
I'll
detailed
get you the breakdown of the
numbers
calls, the
of
analysis.
the calls, the
and
times,
Thank you.
and so forth.
If you think of something else, feel free
Gary,
to ask.
the more data you could get from Marlboro and Burlington,
Okay.
I'm looking at towns that are cut by major highways.
Okay.
Just
We're
Yeah.
cut by 2. There isn't too
Well,
many that are.
Burlington is.
Burlington and Marlboro would be
Marlboro-
good ones.
Marlboro's got kind of 3, but.
Yeah.
All right. Burlington Marble, I'll add that. I'll give you what I got.
Thank
Thank
sir.
you.
Just,
Thanks, Gary.
when most of those stations were built back when we still had the train bisecting the center and
Right.
blocking off access between north and south and cutting off.
Right.
So such that the center station couldn't get down 110, you'd have to have the west station come over Hunt Road to back up.
Right.
So, but we no longer have that. What is now the Bruce Freeman bike path at one point in time, there was a
Was a
train.
train,
It
yes.
came through regularly up until the early 80s. And then there were points in time where it would cut off both the center and Route 1 down by the ball fields at the same time. So if there
That's
was,
a great point.
there was a problem at that time, you needed multiple
you.
stations.
I mean, if you look at just a quick, and I can get you this, I don't want to overwhelm you tonight, but, engine 2 was built in 56, 62 years old. Engine 3 was built in 1970, 48 years old. Engine 4, 1976, 42 years old. And again, engine 5 built in 66, 52 years old. So, I mean, there's some age there. And with age, there's age-related issues. Apparatus floor replacement, we're doing roof replacement on engine 4. Obviously, certainly there's an expense to keep open 5 stations with equipment. Not only by purchasing the truck, but also putting the essential equipment on the trucks. So I will certainly get this stuff to you in a timely manner.
I know
Feel free
that's
to
a
reach out
lot.
to me if you have questions.
I know that's a lot, but.
No, I have the stuff. I've been compiling
Awesome.
this since we got the award.
All right.
So I'll be
Thank
happy
you.
to get it to you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item on my report will be much quicker.
Sorry.
We have received the annual reports from Verizon and National Grid on the underground utility financial account. And right now, the thing of note is the Verizon account is in the black finally, after the first phase is completed. During this past year, Verizon collected $171,567 from the surcharge on telephone bills. The balance in the fund as of the end of the calendar year of 2017 was $154,521. So you can see we went from a $20,000 deficit to a $150,000 positive. The balance in the National Grid account at this point is roughly $3.6 million. So basically, I want to inform the board that this now puts us in a different position because Verizon would not undertake Phase 2 of the underground project in the center until Phase 1 was paid off. So now that we're in the black, our intent is to, with Gary Persichetti and Steve Yonley and so forth, our engineering folks, is to re-engage with Verizon and National Grid and to request the implementation of Phase 2 of the underground project, which would go through the center, basically where the first phase ended by the Common at the Center for the Arts, and basically go down through the center of the community, past where you see Fishbones and Jack Hanley's store, and then across the brook and up past the library. So that is Phase 2. So I just wanted to inform the board, because a lot of people ask, well, when's Phase 2 coming? When's Phase 2 coming? What's going on with the underground project? That is our intent, is to re-engage and to request the implementation of that project.
How far up 27 does Phase 2 go?
It actually ends right at Summer Street on the left side of the library if you're heading towards the library from here, and then it basically stops right at 27 by the park. So that is Phase 2. That is a costly phase, and that's because you have to put the utilities under the brook to go, towards Bedford. The other problem is, from Verizon's perspective, is it's a very expensive phase because they have main trunk lines that go through the center towards Bedford. So if you've ever noticed if you're at in the center in that area walking, you see the lines there. There's a lot on them, and so that's what I said. So we are going to request and engage them to move forward with that procedure because, like I said, the deficit from the first phase has now been exhausted.
You had a guess on a timeline?
based on our experience, I mean, they engineered all phases prior to the first phase, but then the problem is that the personnel keeps changing in the utilities, so that then the next engineer goes on and revises it. But I would bet you you wouldn't see anything for at least a year. That's probably a fair assessment in terms of the utilities. So I would say about a year before we could, by the time we sit down with them, agree, get them to go forward to, and then actually have them engineer and move forward. You're probably won't see anything until 2019 at the earliest.
You suggest that they have an obligation to do that. Why is that?
Well, because the law provides that a town can request, that Chapter 166 of the Mass General Laws requires that a town can request undergrounding of utilities. You just have to
We voted. Town meeting voted.
accept the law and fund it.
Right. Town meeting voted, what, in the 80s?
Went back in the 80s and did the whole project. Why?
We have to fund it, or
Well, they
had
collected
$6
from the
million
surcharge. Why the hesitancy? You just see that this skepticism is the law is like most things is antiquated. It was devised in a time when everybody had landlines.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the problem is when most people have gone away from landlines, you do not get a surcharge on your landline. So
Right.
that's why National Grid only collects 171,000 on a calendar year. And if you're talking a project that's going to be millions of dollars to do, you can understand their hesitancy. That is not the case with National Grid, because everybody has solid line utility for electricity. So that is the antiquated nature of the law, and the reason they don't charge a surcharge on wireless lines is because you don't know the location.
Can they do a surcharge on cable?
Yeah, there actually is. I mean, believe it or not, cable also gets buried, and they put it on their bill, but it's trivial compared to the other costs. It does get imposed, and I think it did get imposed upon the first phase by Comcast and Verizon Fios, but the costs just don't compare to what it is for.
It's kind of a tax because it's paid for by the users, right?
Exactly.
Which is us.
Exactly. Okay, so that's that item. The next one's going to take appreciate your patience, but that's going to take a few minutes. I just want to bring an issue that's timely and also just for future thought by the board. And again, you're the ones who set policy in the community. This has to do with the town's regulations on signs on municipal property. This past election, we had some concerns regarding two issues. One was the placement of signs on municipal property, and the second was conformance to the town's bylaw in terms of signs on private property. And we enforce both provisions. And the issue of signs on private property, there are dimensional requirements in the town's bylaws having to do with signs on freestanding political signs. They cannot exceed, for example, aggregate 24 square feet in area, and they shall not be higher than 3 feet above ground level, not artificially illuminated, and shall be freestanding and not attached to a building, tree, utility pole, or fence. And also there was language in there that, as a result of Supreme Court action 7 or 8 years ago, that it became the town's preference, and the bylaw was changed to preference, that such signs not be erected sooner than 21 days prior to the date of election and be removed not later than 14 days. Well, those preference provisions in terms of the placement of signs are not enforceable because of the freedom of speech under the Constitution. So when we have issues that arise in terms of the political signs on private property, we enforce that in terms of the dimensional issues. And really where this was last a significant issue, and this arose to the change, was when there was a state representative candidate in town who put more signs on a building than were allowed under our sign bylaw, and that was enforceable to be removed because you have freedom of speech, but the town does have the right for dimensional issues and such for private property freestanding signs. The more serious issue, and more significant issue, was signs on municipal property. The town has a provision in the sign bylaw for non-municipal signs on town property or within town-owned rights-of-way. And there are provisions there that a sign cannot be exceed 12 square feet in sign area and the height of 4 feet as measured from the average grade. A banner sign over a right-of-way, a sign cannot be placed more than 14 days prior to an event. Wall signs are prohibited, and prior to the installation, they must be approved. And that's what for example, on town property, you've seen them around town. There are signs, for example, for water bans, signs for buy a brick for Roberts Field, signs for, Nashoba Tech having an open house, signs for fundraiser at a church to buy Christmas trees, what have you, that we've allowed on municipal property. And you've seen sandwich boards in front of the McCarthy School, in front of the town hall even. Well, the concern is that under the Gilbert case, the Supreme Court, that was decided in June of 15, the court came down on the side of neutrality, of content neutrality on signs, basically meaning that a town can have sign regulations regarding the requirements for signs on property, but you cannot restrict them based on content. So, and so basically here's the choice that the community has. We can do what we've been doing, which is allow signs on property, but we cannot prohibit political signs or other expressions of speech. So when an issue happened during the campaign this month, they were removed from municipal property because they were unauthorized. Those parties were notified that you can put them on and we will grant you authorization. That did not occur, but it may occur in the future. So I just wanted to explain to the board, in terms of something to maybe look at going forward as a policy issue, is which side does the town want to go on? You can prohibit all signs on municipal property, but that would obviously mean that a number of the items that I spoke of would not be allowable. Or if you do allow signs on municipal property, then you have to allow them regardless of content. So
If
that's
we're gonna
what,
allow sandwich boards and things like that, you have to allow all signs.
exactly. So I just wanted the board to be aware that that it was a concern that I saw more heightened at this past election, and society evolves and it may come forward in future elections. Now, what this doesn't do, for example, there are a number of properties in town that are on intersections and so forth. They're in right-of-ways on private property. That's not what we're speaking of. But what we're speaking of, for example, there's an island in front of the library. There's a traffic island down here at the intersection of Turnpike and Barica Road and so forth, where it's not an abutting property. It's town-owned parcel of land. Or, for example, in front of the McCarthy School or what have you, that could be a sticking point in the future. So I just wanted you to be aware of it. And again, these are for unintended signs. Obviously, attended signs are fine. People did that on the Saturdays. We saw all that. That's not what we're speaking of. These are unattended signs. And I just wanted the board to be aware of, one, explain how we handled it this past few weeks, and also that this issue may come in the future. And the town would have two choices. One is allow them or not allow them, but you can't discriminate based on content of the signs. So that's all I wanted to make the board of. I'm not looking for any decision this evening. I just wanted you to be aware, as I'm required to, of issues that arise in the community. And then the last thing I have is a real brief one. We did receive our Soul Smart Gold designation, which recognizes the community as being a desirable location for solar friendly installations. We did receive the assistance of NIMCOG through their grant program, and I think, Pat, you correct me, there were about 3 or 4 communities that did get the gold designation along with Chelmsford. So again, I wanted to thank the building department, community development, and others. We are also doing some upgrades in our biotech ready status, and so you'll hopefully be hearing about that in the future. So that completes my report for this evening.
Thank you. All right, we have an approval of the Board of Selectmen meeting schedule tonight?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what I've done is I've replicated the meeting schedule from this past year, just revised the dates. And thing to note is basically you meet twice a month. We work around the Monday holidays. We note when the first night of town meeting is, such as this case, where we might have to meet briefly before the April 30th session of town meeting. And also in the summer months, I did like you did last summer, is July 16th, July 30th, and only one meeting in August and the 20th. So we split the summer, worked around the 4th of July. Again, this schedule can be changed at any time, but it gives us a roadmap of going forward, and also gives you a roadmap if you're planning vacations or other plans in terms of what is the proposed schedule for the Board of Selectmen.
Well, the only, I looked at it, and the only thing I thought we might do, because we can call a meeting anytime.
Yes.
is to eliminate the July 30th as a definitive date, so that we meet once in July and once in August. Now, if something comes up that's important, we always can, agree to meet an additional time.
Can you shift the August
That's,
one?
yeah,
a week?
yeah, because that's
wanna
like
go
5 weeks.
August 13th?
Between July 16th and August 20th. If we could shift this August one up, maybe.
Kill the July, but do the other one on August 13th?
You want to do the 13th of August? And then September 10th? It's what, I don't know it's whatever you prefer.
I can't make the July 30th, just so you know.
Which date?
I can't make the July 30th anyways.
You're going to
Okay.
a cookout that night, eh?
So August 13th instead, would that work?
Sure.
And eliminate the 30th tentatively, unless something comes up that we need to meet on.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. We'll get this out on the website. Okay.
September 10th's my anniversary. It's going to be a problem, too.
All right, we have some meeting minutes to approve. First of all, we have the regular session from January 29th, 18. Do you have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the regular minutes for the January 29, 2018 meeting.
Second.
You can't.
I'll
Oh, I
second.
can't second, I'm sorry.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do any discussion? All those in approve?
Aye.
Aye. We have the meeting minutes from 2/12/18. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 12, 2018.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have the minutes from 2/26/18. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes, Board of Selectmen minutes from February 26, 2018.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
You gotta abstain.
You weren't here. That one, right?
The night, and the next one, I believe.
We have the minutes from March 12th, 18. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 12, 2018 Board of Selectmen meeting.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain again.
Right. And lastly, we have the session of March 26th, 18.
Make a motion to approve the regular Board of Selectmen minutes from March 26, 2018.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any selectmen liaison reports and referrals? And I just want to make a note on that one. Yep.
You have one referral.
Yep. First of all, I'd like to present this plaque to Pat.
Thank you.
Having served as chairman last year.
You didn't take it out of the package, you figure you're gonna hit him with it.
Too bad the hammer doesn't come on, huh?
Congratulations for a job well done.
Congratulations, Pat.
And I just want to point out one thing, that in this category, it calls reports and referrals. Reports is that you've gone to another board meeting that you've been attending. It might be your own liaison, it might be one that you happen to be at, that you might want to comment on. The part about referrals is really a category of almost new business that we can bring up. There is no place, we don't have a place, many of the boards have a new business, but we're supposed to only discuss things that are on our agenda. So the referrals allows you to bring something up, basically saying that you want it to be potentially added as an agenda item next time, so that there's a place for it in the meeting. It's just not as outlined and as definitive as maybe some other boards may have it. So I just wanted to point that out, that distinction. So, George, you have anything?
No, I'm all set for tonight, thanks.
You obviously haven't started yet, so you don't
I
have
haven't.
anything? No? Okay.
I mean,
Pat,
you know,
any-
whatever came up tonight.
Yeah, I do have a couple of things. Reading the Beacon, Paul, I noticed that Chelmsford Wellness Program is up for a national award. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we try to be a little modest, but
I think that's
we're-
exciting.
We've been nominated, and in fact, we have a conference Skype call on Wednesday for our wellness activities as a community, in terms of the rates of participation and scope of our employee wellness program. It's been a multi-year effort, and it's sort of looking towards long-term strategies, the ability to, how do we contain healthcare costs, obviously promoting wellness, and also the social and group team building from interactions of this program. And so we were nominated for the award, and I guess we should hear within the next couple of weeks if we're a finalist, and if there is a finalist, the whole award presentation is down in Washington, D.C., and we'll keep you updated in terms of if we are so chosen. If it is in D.C., I will not be going. I would send Jean Parzielli, our HR director, towards that end, because Jeannie has sort of been the person who has been the leader of this initiative as our HR director. But I think it speaks to the efforts that Jeannie, in a group. I mean, we have a wellness team that has representatives from, school teachers, and we've had police personnel at the table, and other employee groups in the town, and we generally are running 3 or 4 programs, throughout the 3 main seasons of the year. It's a little harder to do in summertime, but it goes to things such as yoga, to stress reduction efforts, and just overall wellness activities. Some of which are online, some of which are done with instructors, and again, it's sort of one of those quality of place to work initiatives. So, we did see it in the Beacon. We were kind of startled that it was there, and like I said, we have a conference call on Wednesday where we should know a little bit more of the recognition going forward.
Good luck on that. Yeah. Just a couple other things. Sunny Acres celebrated their 70th year in business, and we presented them with a proclamation this past weekend. And believe it or not, Sunny Acres has been here longer than me. So.
Wow.
Wow.
Longer than George?
Really?
And the new edition is moving along quite well.
Yeah. And the Chelmsford Friends of the Library will have a spring book sale, used book sale, the end of next week, which is April 20th and 21st, at the gym behind town offices. So next Friday and Saturday, the 20th and 21st, come and buy your a bunch of books to read over the summer. And that's all I have.
I don't have any liaison reports. As far as future items on the agenda, or at some point, we're going to tackle the committee to look at a split tax rate?
Yes, I was going to discuss that one. I anticipate it'll be an agenda item at our next meeting. And we would wanting to look at maybe some sort of statement about what the committee should be doing. So if there are members from the public who want to join it, they have some idea of what they're joining to develop. Also, we should probably be discussing in terms of what kind of membership we want in that committee, how many, from what fields, what part of the town they should be in, and so forth. And I hope it will get a good vetting, and we'll go to stage 2. But again, that's for our next meeting. Next, we have press questions. Any press questions tonight? No? Then the only thing left is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Announce the next meeting.
Next regular meeting is April 23rd.